Meeting to order at 5:30. Some announcements. All volunteers, members are especially needed on the Finance Committee, Climate Change Resiliency Committee, and ZBA, and there are also several other committees that have openings on the volunteer tab on the town webpage. Additionally, the Massachusetts Seal Flag and Motto Advisory Commissions actively seeking public submissions. This is for the Commonwealth's new official symbol. And the submission period ends June 18th. So there's a link on the town webpage to, on the homepage of the town website to get more information on that. Item A is public comment. Anybody wish to make public comment? Right, item B, town manager updates.
So the first one is the Sawmill Brook Conservation Area. As you know, there's a the town meeting vote is often seen as kind of like it's done, but really there's a lot of steps after that. And I would even describe that as not even the midway point, honestly, between the conservation restriction and all that goes on. So there were a couple of loose ends on that are now fully resolved. Conservation restrictions reported. The sign that was required as a requirement of the land grant is installed. And the couple of the debris. So I just wanted to, and then finally, just yesterday, we got from Greenbelt the baseline documentation report, which is, as we know, kind of sets a marker as to what exactly what condition the land was in as of the date conservation restriction took effect. And that becomes something that's used for theoretically for the rest of time in the monitoring of the CR. So all of those kind of open items have all been tied up in the last couple of weeks. So I wanted to just make you aware that is, I think, 100% done.
What did you think of the sign in person?
I thought it was a little bigger than it needed to be.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to Butch about possibly, I think we could accomplish the same thing with something that's it turned out a bit larger than I think it looks great. The design is and the map is terrific. I think the language is good, but perhaps bigger than it needs to be. In my opinion. Next item, conceptual improvements for the middle high school and mixed crossing. This is really unchanged from the draft that you saw back in November at the public meeting regarding the Main Street pedestrian safety, the large meeting we had down in Pawtucket. But part of the work scope with TEC was to set up a meeting with Mass DOT to talk about next steps. All of the other items in the work scope have previously been complete. And because this work was funded by a state earmark, which is effectively a grant, there's a fiscal year end deadline. So TEC did set up a meeting. And we have a meeting this Monday that Christine and Butch and I will be part of, just to really just get this keep this on the radar for Mass DOT, and to just kind of reemphasize the point we made in the project need form that it is a state asset and it is really the state responsibility to do these things. But we have we've got a good dialogue with MassDOT on a number of different issues. So it just kind of keeps it fresh in their mind what we're trying to do there.
So the non 113 related, like the sidewalks, is that something the school district, like the one that goes through the field there?
That would not be the financial responsibility of the state. So as you know, we're at the conceptual stage, which is not even to the 25% design, but as an idea like this goes forward. Those kind of details get worked out, and you probably remember a couple of years ago when the Page pipe stave was at the conceptual design. I remember specifically Wayne saying, and he had obviously decades of experience doing asphalt projects. He said, by the time this is all said and done, you're going to have it's going to need to connect to somewhere. There's going to be a sidewalk outside the right of way, and it's going to become a bigger project. And he was right. That exactly did happen, and I think the same thing can happen here. And would happen here. So we're a long ways away from kind of who would fund what.
Can I have my 2 cents?
So of course.
At the November meeting, I also made the same comment. We had the drawings to mark up. I thought it was kind of premature to start this design because somebody's got to explain the entrance to the high school, middle school.
Okay.
That's a dangerous situation because it was built to be the entrance. And then it got changed at the last minute. From what I heard, the administration thought it was a better traffic flow. That's why you've got that fancy stone wall with the signage. And I can't tell you how many people I see drive in the exit, even though the signage and everything else.
Yeah.
And I understand why it's confusing. I think it should be addressed as part of this, and I would like to say hopefully rectified. You know, the school's gotta be brought in on that.
Yeah.
And I did talk to, what was the lead guy for TEC about it at the time.
Mhm.
And so I just don't want us to get too far down the road and somebody say, why didn't you let us know again?
Okay.
So,
I will re-emphasize that with him. I actually talked to Kevin today and I didn't think to make that point, but we did talk about getting him scheduled for the June 26th meeting to come in and actually present this. But I'll talk to him tomorrow and see if at minimum they could add some notes to this. And there is gonna be a narrative to accompany this, so I'll make sure he didn't.
I just see that as the biggest problem with traffic on that section of road in and of itself.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's being ignored because it's the school, but I think if you're gonna look at it holistically, you should look at that.
Mhm.
So you think they should be reversed?
I do, but I'm not a highway engineer, so I can't, that's my feeling, but literally, every time I go by, there's a car going in there, by mistake. I've seen actually a dump truck going to deliver with it.
And I do think, Chris, it was at the very 11th hour that changed, because I mean,
I don't wanna say that because that's what I was understood. but
No,
nobody
it
cares.
was, I mean, at that point, had you yet taken the role on the school building committee? I remember like it being very, very late, like shortly, I wanna say it was like shortly before school was getting to open, it was very late.
Then the entrance to the other is like.
Even the school building committee was made aware of that, so,
The other entrance is this indiscreet, you don't even see it.
yeah,
And I understand why people coming, particularly from the west, go right past it and think this is the entrance.
Mhm.
And again, Farm Lane has taken the brunt of it too.
so that's a important point, I think that, where the meeting in November was for the whole corridor, and we had set this up as kind of a stand because the drawing was done. We thought it'd be a good opportunity to have some discussion, but it wasn't the centerpiece of that, and I bet the conversation you had with Kevin Dandridge was probably one-on-one with him,
Yes.
and I'm gonna assume he just forgot.
Well, I marked it on the drawing, I had the drawing so we could mark it up too. I
Okay,
said,
yeah.
unless you address this issue
Yeah,
here.
they'll get on that. Yeah, I talked to him today, and there is some resource to, he's gonna be preparing something for the meeting, so I do think we can get that reflected on here. Not necessarily in terms of what the change would be, but some clear identification that that's like very much an open issue.
Yeah, maybe
as
the
far
school
as-
administration is stuck and not gonna move, but I think we're negligent if we don't at least put it out there.
Okay, good. Yeah, thanks for this. That's great input. Let's see, next item, the last meeting, they're gonna question about where things stand with MassDOT on the Rocks Village Bridge. So as you know, we had extensive correspondence with them in the fall and winter last year, and then I think it was last year, right around this time, was our last substantive correspondence. Butch and I had a remote meeting with them at that time. So following the last meeting, I reached out to Paul Stedman the next day. Just to say, is this still part of your work plan? If it's not, what steps does the town need to do to advocate for it or potentially take more of a lead role and try to effectuate a system like this? He got back to me and Butch and I had a lengthy remote meeting with him and Frank Sosinski. Those are kind of the two key engineering people for District 4 yesterday. And I can do a more detailed write-up for a future meeting. I took pages of notes, but in a nutshell, what it comes down to is, he acknowledged that it kind of slid off their list. It is something they had talked with department leadership, MassDOT leadership about. There were questions about basically the fact this is only this technology is only in use in one other place in the Commonwealth, and so I do think there's some hesitance about if they do it here, might that become a, ripple effect where all of a sudden 100 bridges around the Commonwealth are looking at the same thing. So one thing that I think was very constructive about the call was the uniqueness of this situation. We went through a lot of factors between the historic nature of the bridge, its unique vulnerability to a vehicle strike because of how it's constructed, as well as the importance of the bridge, obviously to the region and the regional economy, but also to two regional school districts whose busing relies on daily use of this asset. So I think that was helpful to them to kind of articulate to their higher ups that this is truly a unique situation. I do think at a District 4 level, they are very much interested in continuing this as a serious conversation. You may or may not know this past Saturday, there was a close call on the bridge. I don't know if people know this, but the overhead yellow bar on the Haverhill side was found sitting on the side of the road. Presumably something had hit it, knocked it off, and so District 4 was actually out on site on Saturday, like 5 days ago. And I hadn't known this until I actually got an email from Paul Stedman on Saturday afternoon. I reached out to Butch. He hadn't known about it at that point, so he called dispatch and learned what had happened. It wasn't something that had triggered calls to dispatch or to highway, I should say. But I think that was kind of good in two respects. Obviously, primarily that there was no damage to the bridge. That's great. But secondly, it definitely elevated this in District 4's mind and helps them make a case with the state engineer, which is really, there's just there's a bureaucratic structure there that they have to work through. But one thing we also talked about on the meeting yesterday, they did say that when the Overstreet sign, which, as you know, had been kind of on track to be installed, and then there was a shift and that was not done. They said they really should have followed up at that point about more static signage. They had two specific locations where they'd like to see, similar to the signage that's out there of no right turn kind of thing. They'd like to see one of those on Bridge Street, and I don't want to get into too much because we will get something. Paul Stedman is gonna send me a map showing specifically where they like that, and I said, once I receive that, work with the chair and get that on a future agenda for the board to formally consider. But they kind of had Google Maps up and they were showing us where they would like to see those signs, and they'd like to see a couple more signs on our side of the river and a couple of signs on the Haverhill side of the river. So he's gonna be sending something to me and to the city of Haverhill, and they are gonna be proposing that in the near term. And he did say, and I certainly emphasize that, that would be an interim thing. That is not something we would see as like a ultimate resolution, but it is something that's incremental improvement. And he basically acknowledged that that's something that they just kind of lost track of when the Overstreet sign was taken off the table. They should have kind of quickly, basically completed the signage plan, because they put a lot of signs around the region, but they feel there are a couple of gaps that basically because they had thought there was going to be the Overstreet sign right up until there wasn't. So, but I think it was a productive conversation. Great to have Butch part of it, and so I thought I might hear from him by now, but from Paul, but we'll get something, and once we do, it'll be brought to the board. Let's see, next item, pickleball. We've made a lot of progress on this. We've got a Park and Rec Commission meeting posted for Monday night. It'll be out to formally authorize the submittal of the two permit applications, the notice of intent to Concom and the site plan review. The site plan review application is complete, other than the signature from the chair of the commission. And the notice of intent I expect to have by the end of the day, Monday, so I can share that with the commission that night. And once we have that, we have the signatures that we made, that'll be filed with Concom this coming Tuesday night. I'm hoping that the planning board will refer this to public hearing on July 15th. Unfortunately, I'm out Tuesday and out July 15th. But I want this to, I don't think I need to personally be there, so I can work with you guys or with Sharp and Rack and whoever to represent the application. But we're trying to, move that along pretty expeditiously.
I can plan to go to the planning board. Meeting, if you want.
On the July meeting or on this?
Either.
I gather, so Ann, as you know, is chair, she's out of town through, she's overseas.
Oh,
There's an acting chair for Tuesday. So I'll talk to the acting chair ahead of them, and if it looks, it should be a very routine matter to refer it to hearing.
yeah,
That should be a very, I personally, and I talked to Jen. I have no reason to think that it would be anything other than refer to hearing. The public hearing is a bigger deal, obviously, so I think the July 15th is important. That's the week I'll be on the Cape.
yeah,
I wouldn't be so adamant about that date, other than the fact that's the only planning board meeting in the month of July.
This is for site plan review.
Site plan review.
Is it required?
It is required, and what's interesting, I was very curious, because I've got a lot of thoughts on this. I had Jen Geary pull the records for the action code to see, just to make sure there were no loose ends, no open items. And action code did not go to site plan review. Action code did go, and I'm talking the basketball courts, just to be clear. It did go to 3 meetings of the planning board. This was 2013, something around there. And I read all the minutes, but so it went to 3 meetings, but it was kind of piecing together the record, because Jen, she's like, I don't have any site plan review file for this. I'm like, well, and so I had her pull the minutes. Anyhow, long story short, it went to the planning board. It seems that was largely as a courtesy, because the end result after 3 meetings over the course of 2.5 months is they voted to offer recommendations to the building inspector. That was the planning board's action with regard to the basketball courts. And so I thought, well, that's curious. If that didn't go to site plan, why does this need to? That the bylaw has been amended since then to make explicit that municipal recreation projects are subject to site plan review. 2013, that was not what the bylaw said,
okay.
so.
One other question.
Yeah.
Because Facebook was buzzing about pickleball courts today.
Hmm.
And somebody said, oh, after they get it approved, the design's gotta go back to town meeting, and
I corrected that.
okay, good.
I
I just yelled at my computer, nothing else. It's like, what?
Well, you know who said that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the person who responded should know better. It's just, it was,
a member of the Park and Rec Commission. So, but I promptly, I said, no, it's already funded. It needs to go to public hearing for, but no,
this is where the speculation starts blowing up. I'm
Yeah.
glad you addressed it, thank you.
Yeah. And I did go ahead and in my post to Facebook, which I never post to Facebook, but I did go ahead and post the link to the site plan that's posted as part of tonight's packet. As well as to the memo in tonight's packet, if people want to learn more. I checked on there earlier today and all I could see were people like, great, so, we'll see.
No, that wasn't that. They said, why don't we have tennis courts there too?
Well, I responded to that one too.
I know, but,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
all right. Let's see, Learning Tree lease, this one we've known for quite a while. This is the lease runs at the end of the month, so I did want to just make sure you were aware this was upcoming, because this would be on the next agenda for consideration for a new lease, so I wanted to make sure you were kind of aware of how we were thinking about that. So I know, well, you can say what, are you gonna talk about divided utilities?
Not in this meeting, wait till the next one.
We talked about it in January, and we had researched it, and I did a memo, and it's all in there, and it
Well,
was decided.
I've got all the, I mean, if you look at the numbers, it's kind of like, why do you rent it? But I don't even want to go down that path.
Okay, yeah.
But no, I was gonna ask, there's something about a right of way over a property, is that involved with this? Do these mingle?
No, but I do think that's an issue that would be great to discuss with the board. It's nothing to do with the lease, but I think it is, something that is, it's of interest with regard to this parcel. It's a, right of way, 15-foot right of way on the western edge of the property. It goes back to the early, 20th century. I think it's like 1908, and it's been part of every conveyance for all of that time. I've actually, that's a matter I've got town council reviewing right now.
I know it's on your work list, that's what, the only reason I know of it.
Yeah, because there's been some question as to whether so the right of way entitles the direct abutter to the west to pass and repass. So that's clear. What's not totally clear to me is whether that right to pass and repass means that 15 feet has to be completely open, unobstructed, 24/7, 365. So I did refer that over to Sharon probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. She was out of town for a couple of weeks, and I told her this is not like a front burner issue, but I do want to get resolution to that because it has caused some periodic neighbor disputes.
Do they actually use that right away to get to their property, the neighbors?
There's an alternate.
So,
Okay, we get to this another.
yeah, it's a topic we can, yeah,
I love everything is so simple and clear.
right, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so in terms of the basic premise of the lease, I kind of raised the idea in my memo of looking, I guess I'm looking for some general direction as to what would be a basis for a, presumably a rent increase with a new lease. Ideally, something other than doing a whole bunch of market research, which
Yeah.
we're really not equipped to do
And
that.
there was really nothing that was, exactly possible.
Yeah.
To that situation. I think the 2.5% or, the amount of budget went up. I think that's a reasonable way to do it.
Either of those seems like objective and reasonable.
Yeah. Chris, the other thing, comparing the expenses to the cost, the expenses are for the entire building, so I think it's a little more favorable than it appears.
I don't
You don't?
think so, but I'm not going down that path.
Okay.
What does Children's Castle pay per square foot versus these people? That would be just another way to look at it.
That's a good question. I don't know, but I can find out definitely, because I know what they pay per month. So I just need to do the math, so.
I mean, generally, that's how rental space is looked at.
Yeah.
Again, not saying that changed anything, I agree.
Yeah, no, that's a great number to have though.
And how are the utilities handled there?
The utilities, it's a little interesting with the Children's Castle, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, so under the terms of the town's lease of Page School, the Children's Castle is assigned a percentage of based on square footage, and it's about 8.5%. I don't think it's, but it's between 8 and 9%. So every year, Pentucket pays all the utility bills. Every year, they apportion that percent, 8 point whatever percent, of what they incurred in costs for the prior year, and they send us a single invoice, typically right around this time. I got it on Tuesday. And we budget for that, and so we pay that out of the town operating budget. And it's a single invoice for the entire 12 months. Because they're not separately metered.
But that's through the district too, I don't want to say
Correct.
that doesn't impact us, so I don't worry about that much.
Well, we're paying the bill.
Oh, it comes back to us, then.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we're paying the Children's Castle portion of the bill. Yeah.
This tenant is paying for their utilities also, right?
No, that was one of the discussions before you were on the board was, there's been a question, the last time this came up for renewal a couple of years ago, there was a question as to whether the utilities could be separately metered.
Right.
And we did look into that, and Brian did, some due diligence on that. I did a memo back in, I think it was January. It's certainly possible, but it would take a fair amount of time. And so the board discussed it, and I think we all felt, or at least the majority felt, that it was not worth the time and effort to separately meter the utilities. Cause when you get into, it's a big project, and the memo kind of outline that, and,
But the lease does say that they're supposed to pay for their heat and electricity.
No, it says we do.
That's it.
Yeah. That's, it says utilities. Yeah, the lease, so that's agrees to furnish water or electricity reasonable to the premises, not always stairways, not towards businesses. Yeah. Again, if they weren't already in there running a business, I would look at these numbers and say, this just doesn't make any sense, but to disrupt this business model at this point with the benefit for people dropping their kids, you're not gonna. I mean, you're not making much off it, which I know is not the intention. It would have been nice if those separate utilities make it a lot easier.
and like I said, this is possible, it's all a matter of priority, you know, with what, you know, and I had worked with Brian on kind of, he had walked me through like exactly what would be necessary, and it became a pretty big project, you know, so. But that's definitely something we can revisit, but it's not something for the upcoming lease, and that's exactly why we brought it forward 5 months ago, so that we wouldn't get to June. And have the board ask that question. I really try to kind of get that resolved in January, because if the board at that point was gonna say separately meter. Like, we would have kind of had to turn ourselves inside out, or Brian would have to
And I
actually.
think we sort of walked away from that at the time, basically.
Yeah, that's correct.
So do you need anything from us in order to have this on for a vote?
No, I think, well, I mean, I guess it would be helpful to know if the orders of magnitude, if either of those metrics is kind of, you know, an acceptable basis for a rent increase. And that would be for each of the 2 years.
You guys have any thoughts on that?
I think it kind of be an, percentage increase.
So we should just say 2.5%?
I was gonna say 3, for a reason, pay 3, so. Haven't seen more reason, but. Used to be a number.
Does that sound right, Angus?
Yeah, I think so, yeah, all right, thank you. Great. Next item, the website migration, I actually think it's gonna work out well, it's gonna take some amount of time, but it's a nice platform. I didn't put this stuff in tonight's packet, it was so lengthy, I didn't want to, you know, lard it up with that, but I can send around the kind of promotional materials that we've got in Civic Plus, so you can get a better idea of what these different platforms look like. They gave us a couple of samples of other communities that have gone with the upcharge. You have more buttons, the buttons are bigger, you can do the embedded Facebook like we have right now, that's not a feature of the base model. I think the base model is a perfectly nice looking website, but there are some bells and whistles you get with the higher model. Like I said in the memo, we're trying to kick the tires and see if we think that's worth the extra money of a $5,000 upfront one-time fee. And then it would be a $3,500 annual fee starting at $27. So I wanna really understand if I think that's, worth it. And then secondly, if I do, can I find the $5,000 to pay the upfront fee, which obviously we carried in the budget, so. One specific feature that I'm exploring in detail, which is funny that Rick happens to be here, because this is something that I know, we felt strongly about, was it offers a polling feature. That could be something we could get a lot of mileage out of. But when I asked the representative on the Zoom meeting that Rebecca and I had earlier this week, I was asking some specific questions about that, specifically like, does it sort, or does it prevent someone from voting twice, basically? And that person didn't have the details, so he's gonna get me some follow-up to really understand how is that, because if that's good, I mean, we could get a lot of mileage out of that, and that could be a feature that would certainly start to justify paying some extra money, but I wanna understand how good is the feature, man. And there's a bunch of other features too, that was the one that qualitatively really stood out as something that I felt we could really take advantage of, in addition to the more buttons, slightly nicer layout. I do like having the Facebook page embedded in the homepage. I would be sorry to lose that, though. So,
What are some other towns that have this?
Let's see, I have that, I will tell you, Andover, Lawrence, Ipswich, and Methuen, and Reading and Wellston.
You mentioned in here about the training, any thought to kind of, I was just wondering if this might be a good time to have some kind of policy on website privileges, you know?
I think it would.
Yeah.
I think that's probably overdue.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Good, right. All right, so you'll be hearing more about this in the coming weeks. We will need to make a decision in the near term, because then once I give them the go ahead that we're going. Point it, door number one or door number two, it takes them about 4 months to build it out and migrate it. And they need to have everybody fully migrated by late fall. I think it's technically the end of the calendar year. But I think they're pushing to get everything done by like November. So
we would pay next fiscal year.
So the one-time fee would be basically sooner. So that's one of the things, as I'm looking at fiscal year end, if I make a decision, that we want to do, or if we make a decision that we want to do the extra charge, I could potentially find the 5,000 in the FY 25 budget. Then there'd be no impact to 26, and then start carrying the 3,500 start for 27.
I
So
was wondering if we do a thing on, reserve fund.
yeah, we could. I mean, if we could find it in the operating budget, that would be, less overhead, but yeah.
And in rough terms, what is the current annual fee for it?
I'd have to check my budget, because I want to say it's like under $5,000.
Okay, I just didn't know
Yeah.
if this is a percentage wise, it's a big.
It's a big increase. Yeah, to go to the extra charge is a big percentage increase. Yeah. Right, let's see. Hiring process, we're still working on the Concom agent. I've been in touch with Molly a couple of times in the last couple of days, including this afternoon. At this point, we've got 71 applicants. That's part of why it's taking so long, is that it's just an enormous, so Rebecca's been terrific on kind of culling the field, and then she gives the ones, anyhow, there's a whole process, but Molly and I work collaboratively on who we want to interview. We've reached out to a few more candidates today to see about scheduling interviews for the next week. And the objective is to arrive at ideally 2 finalists, potentially 3, but ideally 2 finalists that would then be interviewed by the commission. I am the appointing authority, but obviously I'm gonna, put a lot of stock into the commission and who they feel is gonna work best for this position.
It's so interesting that there's so many responses compared to just a year ago when we were advertising for the same position.
Yeah.
Just the way this site.
I mean, it's orders of magnitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we even had 7 a year
I
ago.
don't think so.
It was,
Not 7 qualified.
no, certainly not, yeah. And then on the town clerk, we'll be talking about that more later tonight, but there's a candidate that is excellent. So it would be intended to come here. We'll pick that up later tonight. So. Investment portfolio review, earlier this week, Caitlin Gilbert and I met in person with Candidates Trust as part of our annual review. They sent a report, which is obviously much more, has a lot more detail than the monthly reports that we get. So wanted to make you aware that took place. I don't know if there's thoughts on stuff, but I think if you do have thoughts on like investment performance or questions, that's probably best handled offline. You can.
Yeah, no, I looked through it and you handicapped it as a municipality on how you have to invest.
Right.
Definitely.
I look at it as a retail investor, it's like, oh boy.
Yeah.
So I have no confidence.
Yeah,
I know you were
yeah,
great.
There's a state legal list of investments, and we can't, it can't go outside of that. There's some more flexibility in the OPEB, but on the stabilization, it's a very conservative portfolio.
And they're protecting your assets is what they're doing, so I
Yeah.
understand it, so.
Then I'll be out of town, I'll be working Monday, but then I'll be out of town the rest of next week, and then that second week of July, I'll be out of town the whole week, so I wanted to make sure you do that. And a couple of other brief updates, obviously, we got the Northern Essex meeting coming up on Monday, and Chris, remind me, are you gonna be there Monday? Yeah, or was this a date that you couldn't make it?
I will make it, it's again, funny, the invitation, the original one came through at the wrong time, and they said they resent it, never got another one, but. I'll be there, as much as they try to keep me away, I'll be.
Then the DER, the transitional report, I'll be frank, I haven't had time to even look at that. But we did circulate that and with the Climate Change Resiliency Committee, and I know Butch provided some comments and Christine's gone through it, so. Let's see, a couple of other brief things. The Page Telecom, as you know, part of that article was to have a third party basically look at the scope and see if it's appropriate. So I met with Dennis, and he reached out to me about a week and a half ago, and we talked, and that he did some research, and he's given me just earlier this week a proposal from someone that looks very reasonable, very qualified to just spend a finite number of hours, well less than the 12.5 that was carried in the article. So I haven't moved forward with that, but I'll take a good look at that, and we want to kind of get that on track for the Page Telecom. Yeah, I had my monthly Kentucky Finance meeting on Tuesday. A couple of things we talked about there. I can talk about more at a future meeting. Nothing near term. A lot of that was us me briefing them on things to do with page study. But we got into a number of other topics as well, to the SRO, the regional agreement, and some other things.
Any feedback on potential competing projects for the,
It doesn't seem that there will be. Merrimack is looking at a one MSBA program that's more of a it's not like a whole MSBA process. It's more of a,
was the Windows? one?
yeah, it's a Windows to doors. It's an efficiency grant. There's an accelerated repair program offered every other year. So that's a different program, so we don't think that that's gonna directly undercut. I do think it's, this is something that I think would benefit from, engaging with the school committee members over the summer and really having some good discussions with them about where we are, and where we might be headed there. In fact, oh, yeah, I'm seeing in my notes, we actually went ahead and penciled in a tentative date to meet with the school committee on August 12th. So I hadn't talked with you about that, and that's certainly not set in stone. But they have a more limited meeting schedule over the summer, and we felt that having a conversation over the summer before it gets into September and everyone's focused on the school year, and we're focused on fall town meeting and all of that. So August 12th felt like a good date.
Okay.
We could make that work. Oh, and also, Rick here, the solar, rooftop solar is gonna start June 19th. At the middle high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right.
So, and it's 312.5.
Kilowatt?
Yeah, kilowatt, yeah.
Great, yeah, nice.
Which means nothing to me, but I knew I would be asked.
It's about that's about 3/4 of the size of this system over by Page.
Okay.
In terms
Wow.
of capacity, yeah,
This.
just under 3/4.
This no sense. So that's what I got.
Okay, great. Moving on to action items. Item A is a request for appointment to the Housing Authority, Lisa Evans. She's not here, right? Online. Okay. Right, any comments or?
No, she's the next person.
Thank you, Chris. Is that, you wanna make a
Yeah, I'll make a
motion?
motion to appoint Lisa Evans to the Housing Authority. Post the term date for the next time.
June 30th, 2028.
Okay, so it's not annual report.
Yes.
Okay, so June 30th, 2028.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Great, item B, we have a series of riding and driving club. Special permit, request, what's the best way to do this? Just go for each one, so now we have questions.
What we should be seven.
You got Deb Hamilton here representing the riding driving club.
Yeah,
So the first one is the Adventure Trail Poker Ride.
yeah,
So I have comments that are gonna be consistent on all of these, so.
all right,
So on number 5, proposed parking, talks about having parking stewards.
yes,
There's a statement in here somewhere that officers have to be directing traffic if it's, on public roadways. So are these stewards in the parking areas or are they on the, like, crossing from the pavement?
we're not crossing any roads for the poker ride. They're
But
all,
Other events you run, right? So,
actually, this year I don't have anything scheduled that crosses the street. We do have spillover parking at Page School, however, if we have big enough entries. The poker ride, I'll be surprised if we have more than 20 riders. We have plenty of trailer parking and car parking for 20 to 30 riders.
Yeah.
It's our 3-phase events that in the past have had upwards of 50 entrants. And when they bring those big horse trailers in, there is no room for car parking. So our volunteers, spectators, and people who come with the competitors, we've been parking across the street at Page.
and so have you cleared that with police
Yes.
chief?
Yeah, I talk to Mike frequently before we have these things. And I've called Page School, and of course, they're not there in the summer, so they don't have any objection to our using the parking. For this event, again, I don't think that we have any reason to cross the street.
And when you say other users will be discouraged from using the area, what does that look like?
That looks like we don't want loose dogs.
Right, but how do you discourage other people?
We have signage that says we have an equestrian event today, please come another time. And, we often have someone stationed at the lower field parking lot to intercept people who would like to be parking there and inform them that the poker ride is gonna go all the way down into the Sawmill Brook property this year. But both this ride and the Adventure Trail ride in September. So we will be speaking to people about, not either coming or making sure dogs are leashed for those events.
Okay,
So that's not deterring, we just ask, put the dog on a leash.
well, it says not, they're discouraging from parking, using the area. I just don't wanna have any altercations.
I know, we've avoided them pretty well in the past.
Things have been heightened though, with the whole dog issue
I know,
situation, so
yeah.
just wanna make sure that,
Yeah,
okay.
we've been doing this for 35 years and have managed to avoid any, some people are disappointed, oh, I've come from Haverhill to walk my dog here, well, fine, come tomorrow, or come, this is gonna be, pretty short, it's gonna be just the morning, so people can use it all they want in the afternoon.
Okay. Just a general comment, like on 13, police details, rather than just saying none needed, it would be better if. If there was, that the police chief said none needed. Some reference that the police chief has said none are needed,
Well,
right?
he signs it, right, so he could concur or,
Well, he signs the action plan. Right,
he
he's
signs
not signing this, I don't see him.
the special event application.
I don't see a signature, it just says
It's-
the event incident action plan.
Well, the event incident plan says, police provide details not required for this event. He hasn't technically signed it.
Right, it's also dated May 2024.
Well, there's no issues like on that,
Yeah.
I don't know what you're reading, the action plan.
Yeah, no, it's here, that up on the screen. This is, what we received from Dwyer and so this is where, yeah, he's saying. No detail required, but yeah, the date is obviously. There's to be a typo.
So that's not an old one, it's just a typo one.
Now, this is,
Okay.
The next event after that,
Well, let's.
Oh, all right.
Did you either give any comments?
Yes. and it's in thread that runs through all of the insurance certificates. Insured for Kathy Fury of the West Newbury Riding and Driving Club.
yes,
She's still the,
she's still the treasurer.
Okay.
She lives in New
there's
Hampshire,
also
but she,
certificate holder Chris Pilot in 1910 office building. That's correct. I'm just saying the insurance certificate should be, all should be updated.
I'll make a note of that.
On the map. So. The Sawmill Brook, that's. Managed by the Conservation Commission. Right, there's a CR on that,
Yeah,
so it seems to me that the Conservation Commission should be approving this, I mean, it's not like a hiking event where people are just walking, if you actually have equestrian traffic. You know, that's different from the normal. I think it would be appropriate to run it by them. Cause they may have specific concerns,
who are we talking about?
the Conservation Commission. I mean, they have care and custody of Sawmill Brook.
I think, yeah, yeah, but I think she's referring to this portion of the event on the Sawmill Brook property.
Yeah,
And that's also in the adventure ride, you said, right? That's
it
this
is,
year.
we're gonna use these. Steve Greason has, put in, has marked the trail with logs along it, and it's very inviting. I've already ridden it.
Yeah, that's great, I just feel like, you know, it's a matter of process, if they have any concerns about a large number of equestrian, users, it'd be good to get.
I'm sure they'll be okay with it, but I can talk to Molly about it.
That'd be great. And the other question I had is just on the route going by the Mill Pond Cabin, are there any provisions for pedestrian safety there? You know, there was one year that the horses, couple horses got away, charging up the hill there.
That's, I remember that happening. I don't know that it was on this ride or if it was just riders who were,
No, it wasn't, it was just.
it was an informal trail
I
ride.
just wonder, having the horses go right by the Mill Pond Cabin, I don't know how heavily that area is used and on Saturdays or.
We've never had an incident, and non-horse people generally are very cordial and welcoming, and most of us do what I do. If I'm on horseback and somebody's with a dog, I'll say, has your dog ever met a horse? No, well, come and meet this one, go nose to nose, and it, you know, disarms them yeah, we've never had any issues on any of the roads or trails, particularly if people have been warned that there is an equestrian event, they're gonna be conscientious of it. Yeah.
Okay, anything else on this first event? Shall we make a motion?
I'm not quite sure how to make it. but That make a motion to approve the riding and driving clubs event June 22nd, pending on submittal of an updated insurance certificate. We do have Conservation Commission feedback.
Yeah, if you can just get an email from the chair, that is okay, or there's no provision she would like to see.
And whose name should be on the insurance policy if not Chris?
Chris hasn't worked for the town.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, in terms of who's being insured, just that, let me pull it out, I think just so this is where it names the,
Even Angus, doesn't it?
what, I think just the town, I don't think it needs anyone's name. It's the town that's insured. But if you want a specific location, I would say the town clerk's office would be a logical place to hold those, because they're managing the special event process.
Okay,
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, the next one is
Our first horse trial is July the sixth.
Yeah. And it's
Um,
6:30 to 5.
Yeah,
And so this is the one that has the potentially volunteer, I mean.
parking across the street.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's just worth a conversation with Chief Dwyer, just to make sure he realizes
You
that,
bet.
police officers are. And so we use on the food, only bottled water and wrapped snacks, the health agent says that it's not. His, food's not required in that situation.
Yes,
Okay.
and we do have a coffee guy coming who has food handling license. Last year, I don't think he had, loose pastries or things like that, but, I don't know, I haven't,
So I would just make sure that there's no sign up from the health agent required on that. Like, see on this one, on number 13, this is for the police detail, it says none required, and then it says see attached action plan, so that way it's linking the fact that he signed up, so that's great.
thanks. The next event is 2 days after that. Oh, excuse me, I'm
Any
sorry.
others on this, that this one also has 2024 for the incident action plan. I think these may have been cut and paste from last year, is that possible? No?
It's a brand new form that
Okay.
the chief created specifically for an occurrence.
Okay.
I can't really haven't looked over this action plan. I never saw it for right now, so I'm sorry if there are things that I can't answer that.
You need to be corrected then?
Well, it should be, and it seems like you should be aware of it, because you're committing to it, right?
Again, I've done what I was asked to do, and this is new to me, so. If certainly, we will comply with the action plan,
Well, I guess, so is this more? I guess this is more for the police department and the fire department, but it just seems like you should be aware.
yes, we should.
No, I did, would have to correct his, the request.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Chief, so.
Yeah, okay, anything else on this?
Same issue on the insurance, but again, once you get one, they'll all be the same, so.
Yeah. Anything else on this event? Motion?
That's what I'm saying, finding David, like the motion of the
July
horse
6th.
trial of July 6th event.
Okay.
Second motion, yeah, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the next one is,
Our first of the 4-show jumper series on Tuesday, July 8th. So these are shows that just take place in the 2 rings. We don't serve food, we don't exceed the capacity of the parking up there. This is the 3rd year we've done it. And it's generally, maybe 20 riders, and we set up starting at about 1, and the riders ride between 3 and 5.
so
So,
there's not a lot of competition for parking,
no,
yeah, so,
and all of these, when I go to schedule these well in advance, I do meet with Caitlin and make sure that there are no conflicts. And unfortunately, in the summer, there are no scheduled ball sports, so we haven't had any issues with any of these dates and conflicts.
There is a memo in the packet that states that that's been reviewed in Congress, just.
yeah, I'm concerned about the parking stewards discouraging non-participant cars, it's just that language, like they don't really have any right, but if you say there's never been an issue with that.
And it is part of our 1982
Which
agreement.
has not been established, is legally binding, but.
Nonetheless, that's what we've got to work with, and it gives the riding club the prerogative to,
I disagree with that, but it's a separate issue, so.
One thing that I don't think is gonna be a conflict, but certainly something we will be sure is communicated. Obviously, we're, on the verge of awarding a contract for the reconstruction of that crosswalk.
Oh, that's right.
And that will be on weekdays. It won't affect the weekends, which are the higher attendance events, which could have been an issue, but that works only gonna be weekdays. I don't think it's in any way a conflict, but it's certainly something we will communicate to the construction contractor and so we won't know I mean, depending on how things go tonight, we expect to be awarding that contract anytime now. We're still waiting on town council for the approval of all of the forms, but that construction contract could be awarded in the next week for this H5 safe crossing.
And it'll be done this summer.
Yeah, oh, yeah, that was a material, that's why we've been hustling so much to get the procurement done, is to get it done before school starts, and,
So these are on Tuesday afternoon, so it might be relevant.
they need to know one another is there, I don't think it precludes, I don't think either precludes the other, but it's definitely a communication issue. I don't know if any of that work, I mean, I'm sure some of that work has involved jackhammer and things like that, so it's something to bring up with a contractor at a pre-construction meeting to make sure that they're aware of these events and that whatever adjustments might need to be made on, and I don't know what those are, but it's, it's a significant construction project. They might have a laydown area in the highway, so we're gonna need to get into all of that,
Yeah, we are.
yeah.
For the horse trials, the July 6th.
But that's a Sunday, so
That's a Sunday.
that's why I
But
bring it
for a
up.
laydown area, are you talking about in the DPW yard?
None of this has been worked out,
Okay,
so,
we
yeah, it would be.
do put our scoring trailer now along the edge between the DPW and Route 2. And we were gonna move the coffee guy over there as well, so,
So that'll need to be coordinated.
it will.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we can make a motion on all 4 of these events, right? Instead of doing each one individually. Or are there any other concerns about?
In the last four, which the dates on
Yeah,
July.
July 8th, 22nd, August 5th, August 26th.
correct.
Motion to approve all 4 of those events this meeting. Second.
Right, all in favor? Aye.
So our next event is one that I have the paperwork here. I'm gonna give them to Max. I've been promising this for some time. This is a new event for us this year. We're calling it the Hopeful Hunter Derby. And
Yeah, but this is for a brand new, different event, August 3rd, correct?
this is not one of the 8 that is on
Okay,
the
so we
agenda.
can't bring this up tonight because it's gotta go before
That's a good
water and stuff.
And
So-
I've cleared the date with Caitlin. I'll make sure that you get this. Okay, next.
We're onto the Adventure Trail 2 on
Yeah.
September 7th.
Yep. Right, and that is typically going to be in the morning on Sunday, September 7th. And it's pretty much the same as the poker ride. I would like it to include again the Sawmill Brook Loop. And then that event typically ends up in the rings where we have scary stuff to bomb-proof horses with, but it's noisemakers and rubber chickens and bowling things and that sort of. We've done adventure trails for about 20 years. We've never had any issues with any of them.
Any questions?
The only thing that's kind of bugging me on all these is that you say you turn people away. That seems. There's gotta be a provision if somebody comes up and wants to park somewhere and hike it in. To exclude.
I mean, you can try to dissuade them, but you can't prevent them, that's the thing.
Right, and we wouldn't dissuade people
We
from
could
walking.
suggest they park over the page or something simple as that, rather than say go away.
We can say whatever suits whoever the guy, whoever the people are. It's just that the people with loose dogs, we do not want to have wandering around when there are horses who don't expect it. Loose dogs running through the woods. When when we know that there are gonna be 20 or 30 horses coming through during an hour or two, it should be discouraged from a safety perspective.
I just. Wonder if at some point, there's 8 or 9 dates here, if somebody's gonna be irritated that they can't use that space on those days. So, I'm just not
I'm sure we're here about it.
I'm sure you will,
Yeah.
yeah, but you never have before, so I don't think it's gonna be any different this year.
All right. So this one, the insurance thing will be fixed and the right date is on the incident action plan, so that's. Any other comments, questions? Okay,
The most approved the adventure trail event on September 7th, based on the insurance certificate update.
and Concom,
Was this one also going there?
Yeah.
Yeah, and same Concom.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
And then our last mounted event is the second Ice State Hill Horse Trials. And this is the same as the one in July. We used to get 80 horses, we seldom get even 50 now. But this is October 12th, that's Columbus / Indigenous Weekend. In the past, there have been conflicting flag football dates. But last year we hammered that out and they didn't use the soccer field or the softball field on that date. There were enough fields to use at Pentucket that they weren't there. So again, I think we're the only ones, when I met with Caitlin, who put in for all day on October 12th.
Questions?
Motion to approve the Pipe State Hill Horse Trial on October 12th.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right,
All right, and we'll get back to you for the August 3rd date, for the 100 Derby.
okay. And you, if you can send the email from Molly about the two events, send it to Max. We can give it in the file. That'd be great.
The insurance form and
The
the,
insurance form and
And
just
the-
the
and
conservation.
then the conservation.
You know, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks, Dave.
thank you.
All right, next item is a review of easement for Coffin Street culvert replacements.
So I had sent as a separate packet the easements themselves, as well as the plans. We believe the plans are in, final form. We believe the easement language is in final form, although, it all is in the form town council recommended. It's been provided to each of the abutting property owners, obviously given the opportunity to review, they may have counsel, so if they may get back with tweaks, obviously that's, we don't know if that will happen or won't happen, but there's been regular correspondence throughout. Butch is here, he's been more involved with that than I have, and Paul has been helpful with that as well, very helpful, I should say. So I think what we're looking to do, where this is currently before the Concom for the notice of intent. There's a couple of things we need from the property owners whose work this will affect, and so we're looking to get a separate, this isn't before the board, but a separate form of basically acknowledgement of the notice of intent, the work would take place on their property, so that's a separate thing going forward. Also, the Concom, I believe, and Butch has been, the one to go to their meetings, but I believe they're wanting to have the easements kind of approved before they close the hearing, is that?
Yeah, if they, before they go any further, they want to, make sure all their butters have signed and approved what we're gonna do. And as far as I know, the plans are okay. And not formally okay by the council, but they're right there.
Okay. So you're just looking for us to approve the language of the easements?
Yeah, I think if you want to approve it as the form, and then once we have the signatures of the abutting property owners, we would bring them back to you for signature, but I would suggest unless there's any material change, ideally we wouldn't need another vote, just in the interest of expediting this, so if the board is comfortable with the easements as presented, subject to, non-substantive changes as may be requested by the, one or more of the affected property owners, something like that would just allow us to kind of keep this on track.
Yeah.
But if there is any concerned about that, obviously, we can, bring it back once they're in their absolute final form. But that's, we thought it'd be helpful to just, and really, we're here to allow the Concom to close its hearing, so we can kind of get the notice of intent, because once that's issued, as you know, it's sent to DEP, there's a appeal period that's got to pass before any work can get done, and we're trying to get this, ready to be, done in, I believe, August.
Yes, and hopefully, sometime in August, no school, and hopefully we'll have a dry period.
Mhm.
So we don't have to deal with a bunch of water. The biggest thing I'm waiting for is Concom to approve it, so I can start ordering materials and get everything on hand. So if we get time and dry stuff earlier, we will.
There is one related matter related to the project, not directly related to easements, but we wanted to also bring this up just for discussion. So one of the abutting owners has requested that the guardrail be wood, not galvanized.
Yeah,
Right. So I'd ask Butch to kind of help us understand what are the pros and cons of that. My feeling, my personal feeling is if that can be accommodated within the budget, and if that doesn't, if that's a comparable kind of useful life of the product. I think if it's done in one place, I think it should be done in all places where there's guardrails. In this area, so that's, Butch can kind of elaborate on that, but I also think if that's, so I wanted the board to consider that specifically, because you're the roadway commissioners. Because I think if you go that route, we can probably expect future guardrails, what we do here, we should assume that we're gonna be doing going forward, so maybe Butch can tell
There
us.
used to be wood guardrails on Boston Street, right?
Years ago.
Yeah.
Right now, there is across from, just beyond, I think, 73 Coffin, there's some wooden guardrails. What I did is when you guys can hear me okay?
Yeah.
What I did when I looked, price everything out, it just showed guardrails on the east side of Coffin Street, not on the west side. So what I did is, priced out both sides. Just, why not? So if we're just told the neighbor, and then now it's on the plan as proposed, not definitely, for the west, the east side, definitely. So I believe there's probably enough money to cover that. But the big thing I'm waiting on is the MVPC bid went up guardrails. I've been a call and some emails to them to get info on the specs. Comparing wood to the, well, that's where I am right now.
How are they different in terms of the mounting?
It'd be, they wooden posts and it'd be all bolted together. Like I say, it's with the speed down there and everything, I would say it would be all right, I just want to be able to get, the right size and that kind of thing. And that was one of the things we were kind of wanting. You would say, I'll sign this if we get the wood, so back down, work on getting the specs.
And then, do you have any idea on the cost difference?
I looked at that.
Okay.
So I'm not sure because I haven't been directly part of the conversation with the homeowner, if this is something that's a request or like a requirement.
He was inquiring.
Okay,
It wasn't a demand right now, he was, would like to see wooden guardrails by his property.
so maybe, I don't know if the board's comfortable with going forward on the easements, and then maybe we come back once we have more information on the type of guardrail. What's shown on the plan is a steel guardrail, that was what was kind of assumed until this came out of one of the conversations, but
Okay.
it seems like I said, if it's functionally comparable and not a budget buster, it probably would look pretty nice, so.
All right, we got the easement, any concerns about that?
Our legal counsel put the easements together.
Correct.
No concerns.
Okay.
I looked at it, I glazed over and moved on. Yeah.
Ross, what about you? Did you dissect them and? No. Okay, all right, great.
Make a motion to approve the form of the easements for the Coffin Street culverts as presented. Second.
Do you wanna say? Allow for any non-substantive change?
Yeah, and allow for any non-substantive change.
Perfect.
So,
All in favor? Aye.
Couldn't set up by yourself, huh?
Perfect. Okay, and then the next item is the notice of intent. Well, oh, this is for Marino Drive right away. So do you wanna, the background of this things?
Maybe turn it over to Butch. I put what I know into the packet, but, and he did take me out there earlier this week, which was really helpful to get the kind of on the ground understanding, but it kind of came up quickly on my radar. It wasn't something I've been, but he's been aware of this for a while, so he can give some more background.
What happens is when after the rain we've had, and it's been for the past few years, that the water seeps out into Marino Drive, runs down Marino Drive to number 2, I believe, and then crosses in front of that house and goes into the catch basin there. We've had to deal with it in the winters by in salt and sanding. And this has been going on way before this new house down number 4 has been put in. So the contractor is willing to do the project. I suggested going from number 4's driveway to number 8 for the stone drain, but that's where it actually started.
Do you want to just get up and kind of point the,
So is this coming from somebody's sump pump in their basement? And
It's basically the water that's coming from Way to River. All the houses on Way to River have graded their yards and some of the water
Oh, so it's,
sheds off.
okay.
So it goes down in the property between them and Marina Drive and sits there until it gets enough. And then what they've done is when they did the housework and everything, they've kind of made a way for it to relieve itself. And it's running pretty good.
Yeah.
And then where in the before the house was put in, on this corner here, the water would actually seep out of the bank. And the next house down, number 8, you can actually see up the driveway like a few feet, and you actually see the water leaking out of the asphalt. So I suggested some sort of a stone drain from swale coming down underneath the driveway and going over there and meeting this driveway. And then we'll take care of catching that water and then bringing it down to the swale. And this swale is basically all we're gonna be doing is reclaiming an existing swale that is filled in. I worked for a mirror company a million years ago and probably one of the ones to help put it in. So it's basically reclaiming something that's been there a while. And then down this here is proposed driveway. They want to put some sort of like a pool house maintenance building there with a driveway. They're gonna have 2 6-inch ductiles underneath that, connecting the 2 swales. The swale, and then down here on number 2, the existing driveway, the same thing. And also on this driveway, if you go up, down the Marino Drive, and look, there's a swale that came down the side of the driveway on the north side. And that, when it gets heavy rain, does move water. And then it comes out into the road, there's no culverts here, and runs down into the manhole. So all these driveways here will have a double 6-inch cast iron. And the contractor's willing to do it.
That's great.
one thing I'm a little curious about is whether, so I talked to Molly a little bit yesterday. Just to let her know this was, being brought to the board, at least initially tonight. And she just kind of noted that, I asked whether these people knew about this and they would have gotten a legal notice for the notice of contempt before the Concom, but she said they haven't heard from them. So I do think that something that maybe before it all plays out, we do want to make sure that those who are directly affected or abutting this are at least aware of what's going on.
And I think in the past, I have heard them inquiring about the water and how to take care of it, so they can see the problem, but I don't know. I don't think they know about any of this yet.
Okay.
But the system would really only work if it's shown, if it goes all the way to.
Correct, it has to,
So,
you've got to put them 6-inch underneath that driveway for this to work.
yeah,
That would be your beginning point, is start from the basin, work your way up, whatever water comes through, it's gonna be a place to go.
This is on the side of the hot top, it doesn't up digging up the roadway.
No, it's probably 18 to 24 inches into the road, but it stays on that edge. In the winter, it still
Oh,
flows.
you're saying,
I
I
mean, the
think,
work that they're gonna be.
yeah, the
doing.
work, not the water.
Oh, yeah, the work, they'll be on the edge of the road.
Okay, they're not taking up the hot top then.
No, it would be, I think it calls for. Here's the roadway here, there'll be a 2 foot grass shoulder and then down into the swale. So the swale will start like 2 feet off at the edge of the road. And what I'm hoping they'll do is, like you said, with a, everything builds up, so the shoulder, the grass shoulder is actually above the pavement. So I'm hoping that they, will take the bucket machine and make it even with the top of the roadway, so the water has someplace to go. That's the problem, right?
And so you'll be supervising this work?
I will be down there, yes.
So you're just looking for us to,
Well, so I think, obviously, we're, as I said in the email I sent yesterday, we haven't handled, my office, I should say, hasn't handled a permit like this in many years. Prior to 2019, every street opening permit went to the select board. When Wayne was hired and he started around November or December 2018, one of the first things he did was he was looking for efficiencies and he approached me and he approached the then board to say, in his opinion, this is kind of crazy that every single driveway is going to the board. It was gobbling up a lot of agenda space. And so he, with the select board support at the time, brought forward bylaw amendments to the Springtown meeting 2019, which were approved, which basically say most of these permits are now handled by Public Works, which I think has worked a lot better. They've got, so they issue these kinds of permits routinely, but anything of this scale triggers the board's review and with the notice of intent, because the work is proposed to take place within the right of way, that's under your authority as the roadway commissioner. So you would need to, just like you have on other projects, assent to the application and to the work getting done. So if you feel you have enough information to take that vote tonight, great. If you feel you want more information, or especially where we just got the application yesterday and that was part of the packet, if you want to postpone it, I would have no concern about that. I want to make sure you have all the information you need to make a, informed decision. But the Concom's certainly going to be looking for the select board's authorization to do work within a public way.
You refer to it as a street opening permit. They're really not opening the street. They're working in the public right of way. That's it all.
Correct, but if you read the, the language of the bylaw, it's pretty broad.
It also requires a bond.
Yes, that'll be adhered to, yeah, Butch and I are both aware of that, and the contractor would be required to post a bond.
And then the permit, I think, is actually a trench, street and driveway permit.
That's right, yeah.
That covers.
Ross, any questions or Nonsense? I mean, I'm comfortable with it.
Where's the-
Yeah. So,
Make a motion to approve the work done in the town's right of way at Fort Marino Drive, continuing down towards Main Street, pending the approval of the butter at number 2 Marino, and posting an appropriate bond under the direction of Butch.
Second.
further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Let's see. Next item is to request that we authorize the chief procurement officer to sign the construction contract, Page Pipestone Crossing. Any questions on this?
Just do a nice easy one. I thought.
That was that, thank you.
Have a good night, Danny.
Thanks, Butch.
You careful.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
any questions, Ross?
No, I don't. Motion to authorize the chief procurement officer, Caitlin Barker, to execute the contract for the Page Highway work. Second.
Favor? Aye.
All right, and I know I said this in the memo, and I think I alluded to it earlier, but there is a attorney's certificate that until that's signed, you do not sign it, so. And there was the form of bond that I had sent around, it was not the correct form of bond, so that was all sent back to them. And we're waiting, to receive all that paperwork and have town council verify. And, it's Tom McEnany, who you guys don't work with a whole lot, but he works with us in tax title and also contracts. Procurement is very helpful.
Good. Item F is the animal control officer contract. We report, in Minnesota agreement, I should say. Any questions on this?
Well, they're doing something with a change on the credit for the vehicle.
Are you asking a question?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they changed the formulation of some, right?
No, is that?
Yeah, there is a change there. Yeah, Jenny and I had when we bought we had a number of working meetings with them in kind of January, February, March. So I just need to.
Page 8.
Yeah, so the vehicle credit is. Basically, they apportion what share of their budget to the vehicle, and then it's offset by the same amount, so it's kind of a net zero. And so, yeah, how to. Yeah, so it's a. Yeah, they're showing it's a greater share of their budget, but they're crediting us with that cost, reducing what we would need to pay. In terms of direct expense, this our provision of the vehicle is part of the deal, so it's. Jenny would know more, because I remember we talked with Ethan Manning specifically about this, and Jenny was kind of. She's more knowledgeable on that stuff, but it was, I think we were comfortable that it's whatever, I mean, they could say it's worth 2,000 or 15,000.
Seems like an arbitrary.
Yeah, it is. It's a little bit arbitrary. In fact, my recollection, actually, now it's come back to me a little bit. I think that we had basically questioned how low this amount was and how low the credit was in the current fiscal year deal, and they had referred to like depreciation schedule, and we're like, yeah, but it's a vehicle, it's worth a lot more than that. So they increased the expense, but then credited us with the same. With what they're showing as expenses showed as a credit, to reduce what we pay, so. But this document here, the cost allocation, this was part of the materials for the budget hearing back in, March or so. So this, we haven't really looked at since then, because this was, what was agreed for the budgeting purposes.
And it's just a 1-year contract.
Just a 1 year, that was a material change.
I would say, what's the anticipation after 1 year?
I think that'd be a good thing to talk about in July, just to kind of revisit this more globally. I can tell you for myself and Jenny and Chief Dwyer, we are happy with the relationship. We're happy with the level of service. We're happy with how the administration of it works. There was some specific things that we wanted changed, and you see that reflected in the red line language, real specifically this language on page 2 and 3 of basically hardwiring more of a reporting structure to Dwyer, so it's not just episodic, it's more of a regular, that he has really a finger on the pulse of what that position's doing kind of week in, week out. We had to, that's very carefully crafted because it's a union position, and we didn't want to do anything that was gonna trip some threshold. So that's part of why we kind of put in the director of public health, which is the supervisor of the animal control officer in the report. So we wanted to make sure, to the extent there's a reporting burden, the director of public health for them to do that, and it doesn't create a job description issue for their employee. So we did put in some substantive things, but generally we're happy with the level of service, and we're happy with how it works at a staff level. We are aware that in the community at times, there are people who are very critical of the level of service, and my feeling, and I think Jenny's and Dwyer's, is that for what we pay, we get a very reasonable, very fair level of service, and we're very happy with the particular employee, and she's always very responsive. our feeling is if the community of West Newbury wants a consistently higher level of service, such as more patrols, daily coverage, I think at that point, we'd be talking about a new full-time benefited position, a vehicle, as I look at this, I think, I think it's a good deal. But I'm definitely aware that there's people in the community that feel that we're not getting the level of service we should be getting. And I think that if we're gonna have a serious conversation about that, we should look at what the cost would be to
Yeah.
host our own animal control. I can say with confidence that unlike, for instance, Harbor Master, where we think there are multiple potential regional partnerships that could work well for us and that we are exploring, animal control, we really don't. We think Newburyport has the personnel, they have the kind of management framework, they have the trained staff that go to the required trainings. We don't see another potential partner in the region, so we feel like it's this or it's a local animal control, which would be definitely be a new full-time benefited position and a significant cost delta from,
Well, you don't have to guess at the number to be 110,000. I mean, that's what,
Yeah.
that's what it costs, right? I mean, Newburyport's done, laid it all right out.
Yeah.
So Merrimack and Groveland, do they have an ACO or?
Let's see. I think it's been so long since I've talked.
Yeah,
to
I'm
them
just
about
curious
it.
how they
Yeah.
manage it. Is it-
I think, if my recollection of a conversation I had with Rebecca Olin, some time ago, was I think they have like one of their police sergeants do it. I think they have an existing employee who has that responsibility, but
Okay.
I can, it's something we've talked about multiple times, it's just been a while.
So the idea is to have a one-year contract and then in the interim evaluate what it is we want.
Exactly, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so I think it'd be a good topic for July, and at that point, we'd come in with all our facts straight.
It doesn't sound like the regionalization is an issue, because we've got that opportunity just.
Yeah.
The people think they wanna pay another.
Well, and even then, for a full-time position, it's still not gonna be covering Mill Pond on Saturdays, for example. You know, you can't have 24/7 coverage, that would be
Right.
prohibitive, so. So if the person's not there when they're needed.
Oh, I
then
know.
they'll be working. But,
Okay.
all right, we ready on this? Any comments, Chris? I wanna know if you have any comments or questions before.
I had my questions.
All right, Russ, all right, then I am ready for the motion.
Make a motion to approve the animal control intermunicipal agreement with Newburyport as presented. Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, next item is to review the list of board commission committee members seeking the appointment for 2025, 2026. So Max, do you know if all of the openings are filled? Like, there are some boards where people have resigned and they've not been,
Right, so this is actually gonna be a two-part
okay?
process, just because I didn't wanna overload it, so right now, this is purely the, like, 9/10 of the people who've said yes, and we can get that out of the way. I'll be giving you a second memo or a second action item for the 26th, which includes, just for your reference, I think everybody who said no, some of our stragglers, I think we have 3 people left unaccounted for, whether they wanna stay or go, as well as a new updated list of vacancies, which includes pre-existing as well as factoring in people who don't wanna be reappointed,
Okay,
for July 1st.
We do have declining reappointment list in the packing.
right, it's just, I'm just wondering, as a committee, as a board and committee,
Right.
which ones are lacking, so.
So I just wanna thank those people who declined, not for declining, but for the work that they've done.
Yeah.
I look at the names and some people have done an awful lot of good work for the town. I think we should thank them, so I appreciate the work that they've done.
Well said. All right, so do we wanna make a motion to appoint everybody on the timeframes that I listed in this memo?
With one correction,
Okay,
he's here in the room, his name is not Rick Park, it's actually Parker. He would be real upset if somebody else showed up.
Oh, there, I see it, yeah.
and I guess, so you have, David.
You don't know Rick Park?
Is that up by Pipe State Hill, Rick Park?
He's a new guy, John.
So you have a Concom member here, that should be separately appointed by you, right?
It should, yeah, I didn't spend really any time on this issue for tonight's packet, so.
So we
But
should,
yeah, Concom is actually appointed by the town.
Separately, sorry about that.
Yeah,
so
so,
just, without omission. Is that a friendly amendment? Would that be considered a friendly?
I haven't made a motion yet.
All right.
That's all. I
Get on with
I
it.
can tell you, not at the bit. I will make a motion to make reappointments to all the positions as presented with the dates ending as presented with the exception of the Concom position.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great.
Thank you to all of them for doing it too. It's a lot of work.
All right, next item is the salary and wage schedule for 6. Motion to approve unless there's any questions.
This is just the 3% wage increase.
Yeah, well, this just has all specific.
yeah, unless there's a other contractual obligation.
I will make a motion to approve the salary and wage schedule as presented.
Second.
All in favor? All right, on to minutes.
Oh, no, we had the one where the town clerk,
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there, so there's nothing in the packet on that, right?
no, I think
Oh,
yeah,
I see.
no, there's
Right,
no,
all right.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so we had, basically, the market for qualified town clerks is creating some upward pressure on salary. We did do, extensive, selection process. We interviewed, 4 candidates who are existing long tenured town and city clerks in the region. The town clerk in the town of Linfield, Amanda Hagstrom, has really stood out, exceptional applicant, and I think has a lot to offer here, and has accepted an offer of employment subject to the terms outlined in the memo. So it's a higher step on the same grade than
That's budget.
than was budgeted, so
And that money is reserved in the unbudgeted personnel account.
that's correct, yeah.
Make a motion to authorize the town manager to increase the wage for that town clerk position to step D, that's grade D, step 8. Suggested.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, I did talk to Amanda earlier this week, and subject to that, she has accepted the offer and with a start date of June 30th. So,
Great.
yeah,
Yeah.
very exciting. I think she brings a lot to the table, to say the least.
All right. Now we're on to minutes. May 14th, this was the joint meeting with the CCRC. Any comments or changes? Right,
Make a motion to approve the minutes of May 14th as presented.
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Okay. All right, May 15th minutes. On time manager updates, item B. The reference to Sam Jocelyn's comment, it should say made an elevator less desirable, assuming no other improvements were made. His point was that it's not worth putting an elevator there unless you're gonna expand the. On item F, Angus, this is the Mass DOR discrepancy. I didn't recall that. That it was a minor mistake. It only impacted 2 cents on the tax rate.
It is accurate. It would be about 2, but it's, yeah, there's no, yeah, I wouldn't say it was a minor mistake. It would be relatively minor in the scheme of things, but it was, it was an error in their formula.
It was in their formula.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It would just.
Credit to our finance staff for getting right on that, and
Yeah.
it took a number of phone calls and emails, but we got it resolved, we got it fixed, and it is correct that it would have amounted to about 30,000, which is, about 2 cents on the tax rate, but.
Can we just make a reference that it was their mistake, not ours?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that should be definitely clear.
On item G, the page pipe state crosswalk, I don't think rebuild was the right, maybe just construction. See that, that's, okay.
Just trying to vary up the language.
I think that, so I'm moving to, you guys jump in if you have anything, just keep going, on the Mifflin bylaw compliance, Max, I'm gonna send you some revised language on that,
Sure.
just that paragraph to make sure it's consistent with the course we do charge. On item D, this is the Brave Hill snow operations, we're not talking about expanding infrastructure on that, just maintaining current, correct?
Well, let me take a look, where,
It's, item B on page 152. It's a parenthetical and decisions made on maintaining or expanding infrastructure.
I guess what I meant there is that not that we're imminently doing it, but rather should that become something in the future?
Is that covered under that law that we're contemplating?
no. Let me just, this. Yeah, no, there's not, the idea of expanding is not on the table under this law.
Right, so
Yeah.
maybe just say maintaining and strike that.
Yeah, well, it's really snow and ice removal.
Yeah,
It's not even maintained. It's snow and ice operations, period.
okay, so just take the parentheses out there. So I have a question on the next sentence. It says the select board cannot bring forward the street acceptance, nor can they advocate for or against. Wasn't clear about that.
Well, it's not a street acceptance, it's the MGL adoption
Yeah,
is what was talked about.
yeah,
So I would say the select board cannot bring forward a petition to place the question on the ballot without, it says later about the 200 signatures, but. And it is accurately discussed, obviously, that it can't be advocacy for or against by the board,
okay,
as opposed to individual board members can obviously vote how they want.
okay.
And it wouldn't even need to be the breakout Harris residents, it's gotta be
Yeah.
an initiative of residents. That's presumably the prime mover in this instance, but at least not too much of them.
Right. In the next item, this is on the indoor air quality system at the library. I would strike the reference to the Department of Public Health's assessment. Because it wasn't that it was incorrect. I would just stop after comparable to other town buildings. You can strike the rest of the sentence there. Item F. This is on the housing production plan. I actually urge that we strike the All Saints Church, not add it. It's already on there. I think it should be removed. That was it for me.
Yeah, one thing I noticed is that in action items. For the MVP grant, it doesn't like mention, I think we had talked about some people were engaged. But I'd say anything about.
Was that at this meeting though, or was it, I think that was at our last meeting?
Oh, right.
Wait, was that the 15th, our last meeting? No.
Next meeting was one. Oh, so, okay.
We met on the 29th. Yeah, so it was at the
Not that,
29th. Yeah.
okay. I understand this.
Right,
Make a motion to approve the minutes of May 15th as amended.
Right.
there we go. All right, Max, I will send you that paragraph tomorrow.
Right.
All right, and then the last one is short, this is just on our monthly meetings. And we. You see something like this, or is it just?
Yeah, sorry, presume they had.
I just sent this to Max this week, so I may not have sent it to you.
Did I approve this one next?
No, this is kind of straight from the chair of the side of the. I can cut your
It's,
thoughts.
I don't review them in the packet because he sends them all to me to
All right, do
approve.
you wanna table this till the next meeting until we have a chance to review it then?
You're good with it.
Cross the, yeah.
This is nothing. So we should do it now. Make a motion to approve the minutes of May 20th as presented.
Second.
Did you say there's nothing significant?
But I think it's gonna change the direction that we do.
Okay, all right, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Moving on, general discussion items. So last night, Mr. Sarkis met with the Affordable Housing Trust just to kind of pitch his plan for the, maybe the property. I don't know, Angus, do you wanna?
Oh, sign on.
So, I mean, it's probably about an hour and 15 minutes that he was speaking. The trust had, we have a housing consultant that we used to help us draft our action plan. We call on her when there are questions, and she was in person, which was really helpful. She's been through a number of these and asked some hard questions and, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was, some of what he presented was similar to what had been presented in the public meeting on April 8th. But in more detail, and it was, somewhat more informal setting, but he basically walked through how he's looking at the property as a developer and as someone who has property under agreement. He expressed a clear intent to move forward with closing on the acquisition, in the next 1 or 2 months. He basically laid out in order the development options as he sees them, the first being a conventional subdivision, and he had a lotting plan that he had put together, showing what he felt he could yield. The second was a open space residential development, and he talked about some of the pros and cons of each of those scenarios. He talked in the context of both of those first 2 options. He referenced the inclusionary housing bylaw requiring 10%. I don't know, do you want me to offer any commentary or just like, okay, well, I mean, one thing that I thought was a little presumptuous, I think the trust did as well, as he talked about his personal feeling that either a conventional subdivision or a OSPD, and he didn't view were necessarily appropriate for affordable housing and mixed income housing, and suggested that he could pursue a opt-out with basically and the bylaw does provide a planning board's authority, a payment in lieu of fee in lieu of providing the affordable unit. And that's been very typical for the planning board over the years for fractional units. If you have something other than 20 units, 30 units, 10 units, if you have 22 units and it's 2.2 affordables, that 0.2 is a calculated amount that it has over the years been paid by the developer to the town. So that's been routine. But the idea of paying out all of your affordable units, that's not happened. And I thought it was very odd that he kind of seemed to suggest that that was what he was intending to do. And I made the point that that would require planning board approval, but I'm thinking to myself, like, the planning board's not, why would they approve that?
Yeah, huge number too.
Yeah.
A huge number of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's.
yeah, he was talking a 7-figure sum. But the thing is, the Affordable Housing Trust's mission of facilitating the creation and preservation of affordable housing, the primary barrier isn't money. That is a barrier, but it's not the primary barrier, it's the land and where and how and actually creating units, like having, and I think one of the trust members made the point that we could have $1 million in the trust and it wouldn't create an affordable unit. There's a whole lot of work that actually goes into creating that unit, so. I thought that was a little odd. Anyhow, he went through another scenario of potential 40B. He talked about what that would look like from a unit count standpoint and He talked about, it could be age restricted, it could be non-age restricted. Talked about the Title V septic calcs for each of those, and that the age restricted would allow a higher unit count, while staying under the 10,000 gallons per day. He also made the remark, which I did not take as a kind of a offhand remark. It seemed very intentional, that the site could be subdivided and you could actually have two separate developments proposed on the
You
same
mentioned that before.
property, right? And therefore, the 10,000 gallons per day would not be aggregated in how he represented it. So the 40B scenario was more of a garden apartment style, 2.5 story
Yeah.
walkout, three buildings. I forget, with presumably, 20 to 22 units per, an elevator each one. He talked about the pros and cons of the different scenarios. One of the trust members asked him, very specifically, that in the hypothetical scenario that the town were to adopt MBTA zoning in this location, which obviously has already been voted down, but if that were to happen, how would that influence his thinking? And he was very clear. It seems that that would be his preferred option if that were to become available. Let's see, I mean, I probably took 15 pages of notes. I looked at everything that was said, so hard to kind of encapsulate all that. But the basic kind of gist of his intent seemed to be floating the idea of a so-called friendly 40B, which would entail the select board as the town's chief elected body being asked to actually co-sign an application, which opens up some different financing opportunities, would open up. And he also floated the idea of the potential that the town through the housing trust could financially subsidize a development. And I had to leave at about, after about the first hour and 10 minutes, and I gather it went on sometime after that. So I don't know where that was all resolved. I don't think it was resolved, but
I don't think the trust has enough money to subsidize, I don't think that's a viable
yeah.
option. And I guess I came away with it wondering, like, what's in it for the town to have a friendly 40B? It's clearly advantageous for the developer. Because he has, it opens up other funding sources for him. But I don't know that it gives the town any benefit. So,
When he was here, didn't he, intimated that we might have some small amount of influence over the design?
yeah, it's very general though. It's kind of a vague statement that, but. Yeah, I guess the other thing that kind of, when he was here with us, he didn't have any plan. He was like looking for us to say what we wanted, and he did the same thing last night, and. After he left, our housing consultant said, that's not the way it goes. The developer usually brings a plan, tells you what they wanna do, and then you talk about it, or he's almost asking us to do the work for him and figure out what we'll support, and then he'll do that, so. It's just kind of we're not in this business either, should know like how to move forward, so.
Well, at the last meeting here, the one thing he strongly suggested is we hire our own consultant, so yes, he is pushing for us to.
Yeah, but, this,
The notion of subdividing and doing 2 40Bs. It's kind of seems like a gigantic concept, just kind of throw out there casually,
right,
Might not be both 40Bs, he could do a 40B and a conventional.
Right.
I mean. If he could sign septic, he already said this only, I don't know, that's.
yeah. I don't know, I guess so, I'm not sure where we wanna go from here,
Actually, if I could, I'm just gonna give a little synopsis of what I think was one of the more insight, kind of dramatic elements of the meeting. So Eric Mitchell had really asked in a very kind of very polite but very kind of pointed way.
Mhm.
I want to understand your motives, where you're coming from. Obviously, increasing the potential high side of the dollars and decrease this low side, how do you weigh those factors, what's most important? And Mr. Sarkis was clear right from the outset, first motivation is risk avoidance. He was talking both in terms of permitting risk as well as, financial risk and wanting to bring something to market that he knew there would be a deep market for, higher upside. He felt with other projects, not the conventional subdivision, he felt there was a higher profit motive. He said profit motive was obviously part of his thinking, speed to market. He said he wants to look like a good guy, but that his primary motive is profitability. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then there was some follow-up kind of like, well, at the end of the day, how do you weigh all of those? And yeah, he was.
I mean, I think Derek kind of teed it up so that he could say this is for, because he opened with this is for the benefit of West Newbury, you know, we don't have any affordable housing, all of that, and. He kind of laid it out there and he didn't seize on the opportunity to say, I wanna do something that's the right thing for us to do, just said it's about money, so. The consultant commented on that afterwards.
Yeah, I think it was also Derek who basically kind of clearly intimated that like presenting this kind of garden style apartment development seemed almost like implicitly, you know, kind of did like, hey, this is what I might do if you don't work with me on this kind of thing.
Well, same with the issue of revisiting MBTA on it.
Right,
It's, that'd be problematic in of itself.
yeah, I think the timing of this is tricky, you know, if the select board was to consider a friendly 40B. I think that would work against us in trying to pass MBTA zoning on another location. I think there'd be a lot of people that would view that as.
I think if it comes forward with it on naps and another process, probably gonna be done on the line. We've got to get over MBTA on naps at this point. The statement is pretty clear.
Yeah.
Did he mention with the barriers that he perceived or you know, for 40B or the contractors? I mean, as far as getting to market, would that slow him down versus like conventional?
He definitely acknowledged that both the 40B scenario and the special permit have a longer period of permitting, and he even, I believe, mentioned explicitly with 40B the potential for appeal and litigation. I think at one point he said it could be 5 to 6 years from start to finish, and I can vouch for that from what I've seen at other towns. I mean, I've seen that kind of timeline, because you know it can take quite a long time to get the state eligibility before you can even apply, and that's gonna be a lengthy process with the ZBA, and then once the permit's issued, if there is an appeal, that can take quite a while. So, but he said that's in his telling, that's part of why that the only thing that will make that work numbers wise is the higher unit count of 40B to help basically make the numbers work, even though it would take, he felt it could take quite a long time to get through the process. He also felt, and I think he's right on this, that the permitting time on a special permit could be quite lengthy, and that could also end up in appeals. Any of them could really, I mean, a conventional subdivision, if it meets all the regs, someone can appeal it, but it's an as of right scenario, so it would probably not go very far in the courts. But a special permit is a different scenario where it's a discretionary permit.
In general, developers made it very clear they're not in favor of special permits because the planning board does not necessarily have to.
They do not.
You
have
can
to-
go through
Yeah.
a meeting, you know, sessions for a year, they could reject it.
Yeah, and they fully within their rights to reject it.
You know, the conventional, they can already be building it in the ground at that point.
Yeah,
So,
There was the 40B, if all of the units count as affordable.
if it's rental, yeah. if it's rental,
It's 25% affordable requirement, but if they're rentals, then it counts as 100%. But that would be true whether it's friendly or not.
Yeah.
Right, so.
Yeah.
I don't know
Does the
if
friendly help with the lead time?
Well, this is what.
that's what he said, if it's friendly, that would cut down on some of the long lead time. He did say that, I don't know if that's true.
I don't know that it's true, I don't know that it's not true.
Yeah.
Cause I've never dealt with a so-called friendly 40B, I've heard about it at conferences and so forth, but I've never directly dealt with that. But one thing that was a little bit interesting, to say the least, is he's never done a 40B, so he's never personally dealt with that, with the state, with the kind of regulated, the regulatory agency, and the ZBA process, so that was something that I think gave some of us some pause as to, this isn't something that's like in his wheelhouse. And it's a different type of thing than other development, for a lot of reasons, including the state approval process, the higher percentage of affordability, the marketing process for the affordable units, all very highly regulated, and I'm sure he would have consultants to help him who would have the expertise, but he hasn't personally dealt with that. And he seemed very leery of creating affordable units, which is,
So I guess, I mean, where do we wanna go from here?
Well, can I go back to his comment, we were in the affordable units, who's gonna, they were looking for the waiver on the MBTA too,
yeah,
so that's not a new.
no,
No,
It's concerning, so you
And
can't,
so the Affordable Housing Trust asking for support and being leery of creating affordable units is kind of a
Yeah.
bad luck.
maybe we'll go from here.
Yeah, I mean, if it's something the select board is interested in pursuing, I would say that the Affordable Housing Trust can have a discussion at our next meeting, and maybe offer recommendations of what to ask for, if we wanna consider the friendly.
We don't know enough about it, to be honest, right? I mean, his
No.
suggestion of get a consultant was probably not a bad, I don't
But
know.
why do we wanna do that?
Well, he's gotta present a more complete plan
Yeah,
for us to be able to interact with before we can look at that.
yeah, I don't think there's any tension between that.
Yeah. Well, we're not driving us, I mean,
So how do you wanna proceed then?
it's not a suggestion, you don't know. Let's see an option with this to what we do.
I'm becoming less interested in the idea of a friendly 40B. Cause I just don't know that we benefit from it, and I think there's a lot to lose in terms of. Kind of public sentiment. And if he does a unfriendly or a conventional 40B, we still get the same affordability. The number of units on our SHI is the same.
With his presentation last time, the appealing component was that somehow the town had an ability to work with him on the design. I don't know if that's legally the process with planning board or how that works.
So what Liz, who was the housing consultant, explained was that the application that goes in would be co-signed with the select board. And it would have kind of a conceptual description, a narrative of what the buildings were like, but that the actual rubber hits the road with the ZBA, the select board would be out of it. It would be the ZBA that would be negotiating the details.
They will have white front or red front, correct?
Yeah. So
So there's no guarantee.
I don't think so. Do you, Angus?
No.
Yeah.
He also wants money.
but I think Wendy kind of touched on this earlier, but I don't think that even if the trust was inclined to, which is a big if. I don't think there's the amount of money there that's a material amount of money in the context of a development of this.
No, we could supplement one unit.
Right, right.
Yeah, so. All right, so wanna just table this for now, or?
I mean, one thing, it just seems that, you made this point earlier, I think he's kind of stated both when he was before the board and then again last night, how this would benefit him in terms of financing but I haven't heard him articulate how it would benefit the town. So if he's able to do that, maybe this board gives him that audience to make his case, but I kind of feel like he had that opportunity. But I think before you decisively go one way or the other, you know, maybe he's given, like, help explain to the board why it would be in the town's interest for the board to, you know, sign on as a co-applicant for a development like this.
I mean, I can't imagine us, I would say if if we were considering going friendly, we shouldn't do that without engaging a consultant, at least at a high level of understanding how much leverage we have. I mean, if this cuts the lead time in half on a 5-year project, that's significant. You know, but if we're not agreeable to it, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say that we would need a consultant necessarily to deny it. If you're concerned about it overlapping with MBTA, which I agree, that might make certain residents feel like we burned them, you know, by, you know, doing something with a different name, but it's essentially the same thing.
Mhm.
It's not great timing for it.
So what if we wait, the trust meets again on July 2nd? Maybe the trust will send the select board a recommendation and then we can meet at some point after that, invite them in to tell us what's in it for the town. That sounds good, there you go. What are you laughing at, Chris?
Funny quote from the past.
All right, does that sound like a reasonable way to proceed? Okay, good. All right, the next item is, okay, the housing production plan, that's gonna be on our next agenda, the final for that.
It will be on your next agenda. It's not final till usually it's one.
All right, so, but this kind of came out of the working group meeting for the MBTA zoning locations. It's, you can include, public owned property if it's on the HPP, on the housing production plan. Right now, with the Mullen property, it was the only public, property on that plan. Out of that discussion last week, there was interest in also designating Break Hill as a potential, development location. So I'd like to propose that we add Break Hill, take out the Dunn property and take off the, St. Anne's Church property. I don't know why that's on there. First place, so we don't have to decide tonight, but I just wanted to kind of float that out there, that the timing of this works out well if we do wanna have a public property as an
But it's
entity.
probably basically already approved the housing production plan, went to the state and kicked it back to approve a couple of issues there.
That's correct.
Right, but we
We're
can
gonna
still.
re-modify it again?
Well,
Just
so
change
the
it.
modifications that they asked would be that the plan includes specific designation of locations or sites that the town, or the board felt were appropriate for, mixed income or affordable housing. And so that is the specific thing that's before you, so that came up in the context of last week's, MBTA working group meeting. Because, inclusion in HPP, like Wendy said, is a threshold issue. To potentially allow the state to, approve the MBTA zoning on public land, it has to be designated, so I think it kind of, there's an interplay there, if the select board, feels that there's one or more public sites that could be appropriate for MBTA, putting them in the housing production plan would help make that case. It seems, you know, I said, that's why when you said final, I don't feel like it will be final in 2 weeks, because I feel like there's such an interplay between the housing production plan and how you facilitate MBTA in terms of location, and we're not gonna know that in 2 weeks, we're gonna know it pretty soon, probably 5 to 7 weeks or 6 weeks.
Well, I think that there'll be a short list on the working,
There will be a short list coming out of next week. Yeah.
so. It's just kind of a heads up, I guess, just so we're aware of. That's an opportunity that we can take advantage of. The schedule for once works out that we can make this change to the production plan and it would benefit the MBTA zoning location process. All right, next item is discussion of the right to farm committee composition. So. Yeah, following after the last meeting, I discussed the appointments that we made with the people that we had selected. Some people felt that it would have been a better approach to invite, interest rather than appoint people without finding out first if they're interested. A few people also pointed out that in the bylaw, the intent of the committee was to have the different types of farming represented. And what we appointed was predominantly crop farming. So, And then the last thing is that it wasn't an action item, it was a discussion item, so I think it was premature for us to vote on it at a point. So that's why it's back on the agenda this week. What I would like is for us to decide, like what types of farming we want represented on the, meeting. I think that's a good way to go, and then we can put it out and have people respond if they're interested. Unless either we have a different approach. I don't know. Thoughts for us?
Chris, you want to go first? No. I go with the thoughts.
So then I go first.
Thanks.
That's just gonna bring
Just before you get into that, so it says on the agenda, right to farm committee, it should say agricultural committee, so just the semantic correction.
There's crop farming, there's equestrians.
Does it say that? I thought it said the majority of the members should be engaged in farming.
It does, but
It doesn't say you have to pick different varieties.
it doesn't say that that was the general intent as it was drafted, to represent the different types of farming. I think we have a, pretty significant Christmas tree farming operation in West Newbury. It might be nice to have somebody, which I think you brought up, right? The last
So
week,
the Christmas trees on Ash Street.
um. As the small scale farmer, not one of the large, commercial farms perhaps. I don't know, you don't have to do it that way, but that was the intent of my folks drafted. Or if you don't have any, strong feelings on that, we can just put out an email blast saying if you're interested in serving on this. But we have to have some way to review the candidates, so I think.
Again, there's no process for the appointment. It doesn't say you have to bring them in interview. You could curate a committee.
Can I, offer, we're gonna talk first and then I'll take, thank you, yeah. If you wanna stick with that, Chris, that's fine, but let's just put it as an action item on this agenda, just so that we're not making motions on something.
I'm not gonna stick with it. I just think it becomes very messy if you put it out. I could interview people. And then there are gonna be a lot of disappointed people and a lot of hard feelings. And then they're gonna get the makeup of the committee that the select board might want. I would prefer to not even. Types of farming, the types of, people on the committee, the one I mentioned last time. Richard Thurl, he doesn't own farmland in town, but he's a contract farmer, he's got $1, like I said. So maybe you have to define what kind of slots you want on the committee, not necessarily types of farming. Obviously, new people, old people. You go through the whole list. And again, it's just, you said small farming. Basically Lydia and Grant are small farms.
Well, what I meant was non-commercial, like we don't have maple tree, sugaring operations in town or beekeeping or something like that, that's more. I think people call them hobbyist farmers, I don't like that term, but
The intent of this bylaw was directed more towards commercial, so.
right, but if we wanted to have, that group of people have a seat at the table, that's one option. So you're not in favor of requesting input in the decision, it seems pretty
I
clear.
don't know what I'm in favor. That's
Okay.
that point. We're gonna have to look we're done with it. It's not.
Yeah.
Check the cats on.
Do you have anything to add? You have input?
I do. When the ad hoc committee got together, we spoke quite a bit about what a potential mission statement might be for the future committee. So this is what we came up with. And I just wanted to share this with you so that as you ponder and think about who may best serve on this committee, it might open up some avenues of thought as to actually how many diverse farmers we do have in town. We have quite a few people who keep cows. We've got people who know about chickens, which seems to be a major factor in other towns as far as what they get disputes on. So we really should consider strongly having someone on the committee that's well immersed in the keeping of poultry. We've got beekeepers, think of every large scale farmer. These are a major component of farming. Goats, I think if you look at the right to farm bylaw. And you look at the types of farmers that are considered commercial agricultural farmers, it actually goes way beyond crops.
Yeah.
So I would just invite you all to consider the fact that a diverse group would probably serve our town well. And I do believe in the bylaw, under the formation of this committee, it says that they should be heavily involved in farming or highly knowledgeable in agricultural, and that it should be substantially engaged. And that I do believe it went into the bylaw that it should be a group of all kinds of farmers. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Okay, so I'm just gonna check the bylaw for now.
May I ask a quick question?
Yeah, hang on, let me just see what, yeah, substantially engaged in the pursuit of a variety of farming types whenever such applicants are available. But
Isn't there a bylaw that deals with the creation of committees? I thought I saw that somewhere, or is that a mass regulations that publishes
if
that?
there's a bylaw for forming a committee, it typically says within the bylaw how that committee is formed.
I'm just reflecting on a publication I saw that brought direction and structure to how towns create committees. I thought it was in the West Newbury library, so to speak, but maybe it's on all the maps, I don't know, there's a whole pamphlet on it. Talks about how, what the process is for actually creating a committee within a town.
Mhm.
I don't have direct knowledge of that, but I'll share something that may relate directly to what you're saying. A number of years ago, when I was very new here, I found in like a file cabinet, a committee handbook that was on the books here in West Newbury, 2001. It has not been amended since 2001, and I put it on my list of projects because I thought it would be a really good thing to have. It's been on my list of projects for 7 years. So there is a 2001 committee handbook that has a lot of good information about open meeting law compliance and posting, and it probably has, it's been a while since I've looked at it, but it probably has some formation. But I will say it's something Rebecca and I have talked about a number of times. We review our list regularly. She's worked on it. One of the things that was kind of a time issue was the open meeting law has changed quite a bit since 2001, and some of its postings is, so just getting it updated to where we know it's accurate and send it out and feel confident. It takes time, and it's not something that's been a front burner issue for 7 years. So, but we do have a working draft committee handbook. That's something that when we get to our goal setting session, that's one of the things you'll see on your list. We do have, over the years, we've never put in like huge blocks of time, but we put in time here and there. I know Jim worked on it when he was here. So that would be something we can put on the table if you want us to put staff time toward it. But I do think that might be, if I don't know where you saw it, but if you've been involved with town for a while, something that people who've been involved for a while may remember seeing that, because I think up until 2001, I think it was.
I'll drop a copy off for you, so I mean.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same document, and it might not be, but anyhow, I think there's some value in that to have a clear process.
Yeah.
But Wendy's right, some of the bylaws, that create committees are very specific on how it's handled, but in the absence of that, we've had a number of committees over the years where it's more like amorphous and it probably would benefit from some, consistency.
Mhm. All right, so what we need to decide is whether we wanna, identify types of farming or how we wanna go about it. So that we have a framework to evaluate people. Right?
Yeah.
So. Can we decide that tonight, or is this too much to? I don't know the best way to do this, and we need to do some work to come up with, what
Yeah.
we're looking for.
I'm not looking to do it tonight, I don't think you can.
Okay, so then
I
how,
didn't bring my list, I have a list of about 25 different people, and I thought who would be on the committee, there are different types of farming.
okay,
Um,
so what can we do so that at the next meeting we can then do this? So you wanna just think about it in the meantime and then bring your
my
list?
list of thoughts to Angus, and he can distribute it as necessary.
Well, why don't we each think about what types of farming should be moved? Potential people,
Not just types of farming, types of people too, like I would definitely want to have a select board on the first time in the committee, so, and
Yeah.
Ross has a. I'll call it a farm, but
a cow?
a agricultural
Yeah.
bent.
Yeah.
So, that's not a type of farming, it would fall into that.
I think diversity would probably be good, but at the same time, it probably wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to have really like niche things. Like, I don't know how many commercial apiaries are in town, but like, there's not that many, it might not really make sense for,
For that to be a seat.
right?
Yeah.
So it might not be reasonable to be
Right.
like super diverse, but maybe covering some of the more major. And I think we're trying to balance, not necessarily speaking for the board, but I think it's not that we don't know how to put the committee together, it's more just stylistic, like. We're, the folks that might be the loudest advocates might not necessarily be most representative of commercial farming, or the most diverse group, if you will. So I think for my part, I would be trying to not just get the loudest advocates so much as, a good cross section of the industry in town. But also that can advocate, you can't have somebody that's not good at driving engagement, I mean, if they're more on the tools sort of thing,
Mhm.
so.
So what if we put together our proposal and send it to Angus, and that can be in the packet to discuss at the next meeting?
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Mm.
One thing to think about also is what the charge should be for the commission, for the committee. I think to help get the committee up and running, maybe some direction from the select board is needed as to what the first year should look like, or, some potential things to work on. That would be helpful. So if we can include that with your proposed roster, that'd be.
And then we're gonna interview these people. So
No, not necessarily.
Okay,
I was just saying, if we wanna gauge input and know that whoever we are thinking of appointing wants to do it, that's one way to do it. That's typically what we do,
Yeah, it is.
on the town website.
Yeah, it is typical, obviously, to have this, the committee interest form. This simple one-page application. We do typically have this on file when there is a newly appointed person. We don't ask people for reappointment to do it but it is kind of nice, and the clerk's office maintains a record of those. So I think, and that's a kind of an affirmative expression of someone's interest and intent to serve.
So if we come up with a proposed structure of the committee, we could ask people to fill out that form if they fall in one of the categories and are interested. And we don't have to interview, we could just review the forms and decide. Does that sound reasonable? Ross, healthy?
Yeah, I think that sounds.
All right. All right, good. So next meeting, we will decide on that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Russell. Discussion of potential public land donation. This is the landlocked portion of the property at 0 Middle Street. So Angus included the plans for this.
Yeah, just the excerpt reference and the applicant's cover letter, but this kind of came to me kind of out of the blue. You know, I'm in no position to speak for the board, so I said, you know, I brought it to Wendy and she said, yep, we'll put it on the next agenda just for the board to, and it's not on for an action item, it's not on to accept this or not. It's on for discussion as to basically get an understanding from the board, is this something you want to pursue? And if so, we can move toward that. And if it's not, we can put a resolution to it, or if it's something you need more information to consider, we could invite the whomever in. But
Yeah, it was brought up at the planning board. It was just an assumption, and I think a lot of developers do this. They just donate part of the parcel to the town and they think that buys them goodwill with the planning board. But typically it's a parcel they don't want, so this is all the wetland in the back, it's landlocked. And the
Even
chair,
the county doesn't, it buys it, but it doesn't, just touches on.
Yeah.
There's no connectivity.
so the chair of the planning board asked me if the select board would be interested, and I said, well, not necessarily, in the assumptions we would want it, and I don't know, why would we take land that we can't use? It just seems like there's no value to the town. Can't be developed because it's wet. So, I don't know what your thoughts are on it.
Are you talking to Essex County?
I have not, it's not my responsibility.
yeah, that's my opinion. We haven't, nor I think if, depending on how tonight goes, it could be, you know, I could tell the town planner or a member of the planning board, like, let the developer know, contact Greenbelt, but that's not, we're not brokering that deal, that's not our. As you know, we got a project list a mile long that we're struggling to
And
find.
again,
time
you'd have to
for.
sort of slide the property line up a little for even Essex County Greenbelt to be interested in, right?
Why, I did.
They don't have the whole parcel, do they?
I think they
Bring it
do,
down.
do mine
I
now.
looked on the map earlier today, I thought that parcel kicked right at the corner. He's got no tax, but I don't assume. So it's not like you're losing anything if you accept it.
So which is the one that Greenbelt owns?
To the west. of it.
R 1580, and the way they're drawing the line, it touches at the corner and goes across, so it doesn't even give them.
That's access though. I mean, it's not like the entire border, but it's,
Just the point, theoretically, is
yeah, it's basically the tree line.
unless you'd have to make sure it accommodated at the, you know, Essex County would have to.
Yes, they're interested.
The line is dangerously close to being,
Yeah.
making it useless.
So is it something we're interested in considering, or I guess that's the point of tonight's discussion? I'm not, but
I don't see it as a.
I also do feel if it's ultimately recommended that they engage with Greenbelt and consider donating the land, I don't think that should, in my opinion, be a condition of a permit.
no,
The planning board shouldn't be imposing a condition on a private party if they an interest to another private party. They have done that in the past, and I had concerns about that. I know you have as well.
yeah,
I just don't think it's really not the town's, you know, that's not the town's, we're not a horse in the race.
Yeah.
Basically.
so any interest in pursuing this?
Like,
Yeah. Alright, so you wanna just?
Yeah, I'll convey that back.
Okay. Alright, next item is decarbonization roadmap. You still with us?
Yes, I am. Shall we walk through that presentation?
Sure.
Right to. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, we started working on this last year. Took some time to put the data together on our buildings and energy consumption, and so we got that done, and they took some time. They had a lot of other towns also doing the same thing, so it took a few months to get the work done. We worked through some drafts earlier this year. Asked them to look specifically at ground source heat pumps.
which they did and did a good job on. And so generally, the idea is look at the end of life dates on our HVAC equipment and water heaters. And make plans to replace any oil burning equipment or fuel burning equipment with heat pumps. That's the main point. There was a fairly quick study, using the data that we presented, we provided, but no, site visits or anything, so. Current incentive levels, et cetera, things could change, but it's a good starting point. Next. The overall impact of the plan is to go from. These buildings currently use 460 megawatt hours of electricity a year. And by 2050, the projection is 560 megawatt hours. 1,800 million BTUs of natural gas we use currently in these buildings, and in 2050 there will be zero natural gas. And a reduction of carbon emissions, 240 tons a year. That is the high level intention. I don't think this needs to go through all the details of this, but they lay out a plan for doing energy efficiency studies in the first couple of years. And then they estimated, again, based on end of life of equipment, that these were appropriate times to replace heaters or hot water heaters in various buildings.
So I had a question on this, Chip. Wouldn't you wait until you've done the energy efficiency assessments of the buildings before you start installing the stuff and replacing stuff? I mean, it has 2026, which is, within the 2 year. And I think,
Yeah, you could be right, we're gonna have to adapt this plan. They had their approach, their technique, their method that they do a lot of these kind of plans, and this is how they wrote it out for us. And based on the age of the equipment.
Regarding the heat pump hot water heaters. I don't think. There isn't a lot of question regarding configuration, sizing. You don't need an energy audit to replace your hot water heater. It's a pretty simple device, single purpose, and you know that. What you end up with. If you wait until after an energy audit has been done, will be no different than what it would be before the energy audit is done. That particular water, the water heater.
I think, when I think the efficiency is not so much looking at the heating equipment as the building. Insulation levels, ceiling, things like that, so that before you replace equipment, you have the building tight. Next. Continuing timeline, later years, this discussion about stoves, replacing gas stoves with induction stoves. I think in the end, well, we're not really gonna need to talk about the housing, but all the housing units have gas stoves. On the other way, please.
Yeah.
At the end, the plan includes buying renewable energy certificates if we're not down to zero in 2050, but we'll see what happens. This is about the different categories of action and how much the upfront investment is, what they estimate the incentives would be, and so then what the net cost is to the town and what the impact is in terms of emissions reduction between now and 2050.
Chip, the reason I was scrolling back, I was trying to recall if I'd seen anything about the if the reference to the West Newbury Housing Authority induction stoves was specific to the units or also obviously we've got the kitchen and the safe center. I don't know if that's specifically part of this but obviously that seems like it'd be an opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, we would want to do it to all the stoves.
Yeah, and that's something that, this is a bigger conversation for another time, but we've talked off and on over the years about the potential. Or the value that could come from having more of a commercial kitchen, since we are doing so much food prep. And Jen does amazing work in a very constrained space. That's a whole different discussion, but obviously if something like that was taken on, there's ways to do it that are more efficient. Energy wise, and there's the arguably underutilized space in the annex kitchen area, so that's a bigger effort, but. We're doing a lot more food prep for our program than a lot of other senior centers or towns our size.
And then this is how the funding works out, in the plan, presented in the previous slides. With a gross investment and then the net investment on net of the incentives. And then, looking at, their method was largely based on air source heat pumps. We asked them to look at the ground source heat pumps, that was something outside their normal practice. But it turns out that in some cases, the superior incentives for ground source heat pumps make them less expensive in terms of upfront investment. And then their efficiency makes them more, they're twice as efficient. A ground source heat pump, I think, about twice as efficient as an air source heat pump, so the operating costs would be lower in the future. So a little further at the bottom of this slide, it talks about I think a 22-year payback period economically for air source heat pumps and 3 years for ground source heat pumps. And I haven't done a detailed analysis, but I assume it's based on ground source heat pumps will consume half as much energy as an air source heat pump.
Wow, 22 versus 3, that's pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah. And then, was there one more slide? Oh, yes. Yeah, so just, so what would we do? Do the audits first. And then, I don't choose which projects to do when. And, figure out how to manage it. Volunteer committee, they do certain things, town staff. Let's do things, don't have the answer on how we would manage it, just advocating that we stop buying fuel burning equipment.
Okay.
I did meet with Rick last Friday, with, I think, a conversation very helpful to me, anyway, on kind of the different levels of the energy audit, and that there would be one path, as I understand it, if we were part of power options, to get basically free energy audits as well as part of that low cost membership, but or to do more of like a more in depth. I don't know if you want to elaborate on like what those two options
I
are.
followed up with power options after talking to
Okay.
you, yeah, before you talked to Rick.
Okay.
You don't have to. You don't have to be a member of power options to have access to their energy audits.
Okay.
But yeah, the audits are not free, so that they referred us to Guardian.
Yep.
Energy management, Charlie called me right back. And initially it sounded very eager to come out and start visiting our buildings and prepare a proposal. I haven't heard back from them this week. I told, we're considering various options, but so. The power option would be work with Guardian and systems at the cost that they estimate.
Our Guardian is our options. I guess preferred recommendation at this point in time for energy audits.
Municipal.
Yeah, for municipal energy audits. There are alternatives. And we should probably consider alternatives. Not to say that we shouldn't consider Guardian, but we have to decide what level of audit we want, how deep we want to go if we do energy audits. Mass Save / National Grid. the Mass Save is a state program, but it's really administered by, public utilities. And, Mass Save has programs for audits. They have programs for what they refer to as, or a program for what's referred to as a comprehensive building assessment. Some buildings would qualify for that, some buildings would not. Generally speaking, the Mass Save audit programs, I believe, are no cost. Because they're paid for by the Mass Save program, essentially they're paid for by a small charge in every single bill. And we should consider the alternatives and choose the one that seems to give the most bang for the buck. If something's free, sometimes the quality is reflective of the price. We ought to understand what the options are.
So how do you propose going about that? I mean, it seems almost like we need a proposal for the different options for conducting the audits, right? I mean, there needs to be funding for it.
Yeah. Right, so
Is that a warrant article or is that come out of the operation budget?
yeah, so our next step is to do that, get proposals.
Right. Yeah, so, Angus and I had a conversation, I guess there's some discussion going on with the library at this point, because they're looking at their 5-year plan and trying to figure out what to do, and, so there's the possibility of energy audit for the library and or for the town hall. I'm not certain that those are where we ought to focus our effort now, although if there is actually an activity that's going to happen with the library, then yeah, it makes sense. That energy efficiency should be part of the discussion or part of the conversation. The town hall probably doesn't qualify from a Mass Save standpoint because of the low level of usage of the building. And, talking with somebody from Lori Timmerman with National Grid, operates within the Mass Save program, National Grid. She referred to the town hall as more a almost a science, not a science project, that sounds demeaning, but it's not a simple building and its structure is not simple. It wouldn't be easy to insulate. It wouldn't be easy to add a infiltration barrier. It would be a significant project to evaluate the building. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be done, but I think, the town should really understand what its aspirations are for the building, what the realistic aspirations are before doing the whole lot there. Currently it's a great shoulder season building. It's too cold in the winter, and it's very expensive to heat, and it's going to be hot in the summer. The library, I asked Mass Save to tell us, to determine whether or not the building, they can look at our energy level, mass energy insights, energy usage and mass energy insights. I asked them to look at the building, determine whether it would qualify for what they call a comprehensive building assessment, whether the library specifically would, and we'll hear back, I imagine, within a week or so as to whether or not that qualifies for that program. And if the town decides it makes sense, if the board decides it makes sense to look seriously at the library, then that will, and if it qualifies for a comprehensive building assessment, that might be the best option for the library.
I had asked Chip and Rick, or really the committee, the Energy Sustainability Committee, to kind of give some free advice to the library working group on there, just kind of ad hoc observations, because I know obviously I spent a lot of time thinking about this. Both buildings, but especially the town hall, and they did a really nice write-up, that came in on Tuesday. I didn't think to put it in your packet. I did send it around to the library working group, which has its next meeting, I think, a week from Tuesday. So we shared that, and there was some good follow-up to dig into that further with Brian, but to kind of build out our existing knowledge, to get it more documented, I think is super. So I appreciate really very much what you guys sent there. And I'll send that around to, Wendy was on the other one, because she's on the library working group, but I'll send that to Chris and Ross as well.
Any questions or comments from the board?
With two, because I don't understand a lot of this stuff. This net zero, is it a requirement from the state or the feds, or is it just something the town's trying to accomplish? Where did the directive come from?
It's a state policy.
By 2050, all municipalities?
The state wide, a state as a whole. 2050 is a common net zero target date.
But is it a requirement or a target?
It's not a requirement.
Yeah, I think that's the question.
I just want to know what the origin of it
Yeah.
was, yes.
From the federal government, and the current administration, they probably want you to use as much energy as reasonably as possible.
Another question is renewable energy certificates. Are you gonna purchase those if you don't hit net zero? Explain that to me, because I don't understand that concept, please.
So. You wanna do it? Okay, yeah, well, renewable energy certificates are, um. They're created, they're somewhat intangible, but essentially they're the credit for the production of renewable energy. And, so when you produce renewable energy, you actually produce energy, but you also now are creating what are referred to as attributes, known as renewable energy certificates. And
It's how renewable energy is bought and sold, basically. It's a way of quantifying the environmental
It's like a
aspects.
credit on electric with your solar. then.
it's how the capacity is counted.
So it really doesn't fix your problem, though. If you don't get there, you haven't solved the problem by giving somebody money for their credits. The problem still exists, right?
Right, it's if you say this is our goal to reach it, and you might need to do this in order to reach it, if that's your sole objective.
Well, but today you could sit there and I don't know what it costs to buy renewable, you could buy them today and not do a darn thing in town, right? It's
You
less than genuine, I guess.
I know,
I-
Somebody else is offsetting here,
yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, but you're still consuming.
Yeah.
The fossil fuels, it just,
I don't disagree with you, Chris, but that's the system that exists at this point. It's an incentive, it's done to create incentives for production of renewable energy, systems.
yeah, but again, if net zero is a suggestion rather than a mandate to go and buy credits to satisfy that, be kind of silly. I mean, I agree with the objective of trying to get there.
Yeah, well,
It creates a false.
yeah, so. This report is a very high level report, it's from 100,000 feet, not from 50,000 feet. In my mind, and. For a town like West Newbury. If what you really wanna do is become carbon neutral, we have the space, we have rooftop space, we have other space. Where we can install our own capacity, I mean, just as we currently have. We can install our own capacity to generate renewable energy. Over time, it's not the kind of thing that you would do. In a near term, but, we're talking about a 30-year. Or 25 year.
See, that is the goal, is, to me, it's more tangible and realistic than buying credits. That's
Right.
just throwing money
Right,
into somebody else's pocket to satisfy an objective that's not a mandate.
right, so here's an interesting twist, not to complicate this, but. The system that's over the Main Street Solar, you know, over by Page, 442 kilowatts. We purchase the renewable energy, we repurchase the kilowatt hours that are generated by that system from Ameresco. But they own the RECs, the renewable energy certificates, and they have sold those RECs. So, you know, it's a funny structure. In that case, though, we are actually using, you know, we're paying for the renewable energy.
And it's part of how utilities meet their mandates. They do have mandates for renewable energy and that they meet it through recs.
Thank you.
These space heating pumps, like, for instance, 2028, senior housing installed ductless mini split. So those typically need to be augmented by something in the real colder parts of winter, don't they?
The current technology pretty much, well, basically can provide the heat you need. That they talk about being rated down to -13 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know, don't we have ductless in some town facilities right now that still need to be augmented by?
We have. At the Page School, there was a replacement of a failed heat pump
Yeah.
that was done within the last year or year and a half.
Mhm.
And there is. That is probably capable of heating the space on its own, but there is, as chance would have it, this is a long story.
That was the baseboard heating was.
Yeah, there's baseboard that was reinstalled.
Right.
In that space because the old heat pump had failed.
Yeah.
And so a new heat pump was installed, which I suspect is capable of heating the space adequately. At something better than a resistance electric heater, you know, meaning that it has a coefficient of performance greater than 1, you know, it actually is working like a heat pump. And as Chip said, there are now, you know, cold climate rated heat pumps that operate effectively, you know, with a COP greater than 1, down well below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. You know, so you can do it with, you know, you can heat without augmenting it from another system, using the air source heat pump.
So.
Now you can do it more efficiently with a ground source,
Right.
but you can do it with an air source heat pump.
Are we talking about voting on this tonight, like?
Oh, no,
Okay.
no, it's just a discussion.
I mean, personally, I'm supportive of. Decarbonization, but I think I would fall more along the spectrum of like almost net zero. You know, would be what I would be supportive of. Because I still think that there's some things that just make sense to use fossil fuel for. Like, in other words, if the whole world stopped using fossil fuel except for cooking stoves, I think we'd be okay. You know, like, I don't think we would have climate change issue just from gas stoves. So you know, I mean, it just doesn't strike me as reasonable to have zero at any and all cost. You know, that's just my take. I think if we were 90% decarbonized or 95, it'd be pretty darn good. I don't want to make the police cook with an induction heater. That seems like a bummer. So that's just my take on it.
All right, so you guys are gonna work on the efficiency proposal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just as so I know nothing about any of this stuff, as you guys know from working with me for years. But the house we moved into a couple of years ago has the induction rate stovetop. It's amazing.
Oh,
Like, just as a user, it like, you can boil water in under a minute. They're pretty amazing, so.
Yeah, so Ross, I don't know if you have any experience with an induction stovetop.
A little while ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I'll make you a cup of tea, and I'll take you about it.
Well, it's probably not discussion for this meeting, but you've gone over to my house and I'll show you ours sometime.
Yeah.
And,
But it ties into the credit thing too, it's 100% net zero, and then, you know, cost really practical. And I don't know how this distills down into an action plan, but if this is gonna be the guiding concept, then it's gonna, of course, drive, you know, more granular actions, and I just personally prefer one that kind of balances practicality with.
yeah, well, I think what we need to all acknowledge is that, this is a 25-year schedule basically at this point. It's unlikely that any of us are gonna be sitting in this room 25 years from now and involved in a conversation like this. And things are gonna change over time. You know, there are a lot of factors that we don't even know them right now, and there are factors that are way beyond our individual control right now. That are gonna impact the way this all happens, but, you know, if we can start down the path, and at any point, you can turn left, turn right, go straight. You know, obviously, once you've made a capital investment, you've done that, but what you do for your next investment is your next decision.
All right, should we move on to the streetlights?
So do you wanna go to the slides, or do you wanna start with this, kind of narrative?
Let's just do the one pager, I think.
Okay,
You know, we started talking about converting streetlights to LEDs in 2023, on the Merrimack Light Department. We started collecting the data then on our poles, that are what the lights are. Then last year at a conference, municipal conference with National Grid, we learned that they now will do that, so that we don't have to buy the lights and pay National Grid for that, and then pay a vendor for the lights. It's now National Grid is offering to do that replacement. They would continue to own them, but we would save 65% of the energy it takes to run the lights, the same lighting. Early this year, they provided some specifications on the kind of lights they offer. And so we looked at those kind of closely, recommending the 3000 K color option, or yeah, very helpful graphic there from the Dark Sky organization. This is consistent with the Dark Sky. Dark sky standards that are, you know, wildlife friendly and dark sky friendly. Currently 2200 K is the color of the sodium lamps. 3000 K is the proposal. 4000 K is the other option that National Grid has. And which is just regulated by the Department of Public Utilities, what their offerings are, so 3000 K, 4000 K. So we recommend 3000 K lights at the same brightness level as we currently have. The lamps are rated in terms of lumens, and a lot of 50-watt lamps are 4000 lumens. So in the presentation, I have some details about spec sheets for the products that National Grid supplies. Yeah, like that. Really,
this one.
the Dark Sky organization has an approved products list. These are products that National Grid provides, and so I was just finding that these products are on the Dark Sky approved products list. So they should be consistent with environmental concerns, budget concerns we'll have on those LED lighting. Recommend that we, reach out to National Grid and say we would like to do this. They have told us, once we choose what lights we want, the color and the brightness, there's very little work required for town staff. And that's the last, the last slide in the presentation is a quote from Joe Morocco at National Grid. I told him we're concerned about town staff resources, and this is, what he had to say about that.
I had a question on the finances. The statement said we'd save on electricity, we're saving 8,500 a year.
Yeah, based on the numbers we talked about here.
Okay, and then it says while continuing to pay National Grid to maintain the equipment, so what does that mean?
Its current electric bills include, my understanding is,
Yeah,
service charges from National Grid.
Oh, that's what that refers
Yeah,
to.
we're essentially paying a lease, or we're renting the lamps currently, and National Grid is the owner of the lamps, takes responsibility for any maintenance.
So at first we were talking about buying those from them and then buying the equipment and replacing them. Now they would continue to own the equipment, they would continue to charge us for maintenance, but we would save on the energy portion.
So what would the delta be? If we're saving 8,500 on electricity. How much are we spending on the lease of the lamps? I'm just trying to get a sense of how much that 8,500 would offset, you know, what we're paying for the maintenance.
I haven't looked at the electric bills on this point lately, you know, but typically we look at electric bills, the energy is around half.
Okay.
Of the cost of the bill.
But would that cost change with it? Would that be the same cost as it currently is? The
Service, the energy cost would decrease, the other side would not.
would not change, right? Yeah.
But the energy reduction cost, you know, is the $8,500.
Right, yeah. But there's not an offset, there's not an increase in cost of rates, that's
No.
what we're already paying on our streetlight bills.
Yeah, and, you know, I think from National Grid standpoint, their maintenance costs actually, you know, the cost to them, to National Grid actually is likely lower with LEDs.
So is this just the town roads or would it include 113?
Includes one thing.
And I think we.
I don't know if it's a state highway, how that works.
And we pay those.
But I know, but just as far as changing out lighting, do you need approval from the state? I don't know.
I don't know either, yeah.
Question mark. Another,
You know, state policy is to encourage this kind of.
they might have a, you know, relative to the brightness of what, I don't know what the state would say on it. I just. If you're gonna move forward with it, need to make sure. Because we think it's great that the state agrees.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so we can ask that question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in touch with, you know, district engineer, like, we had a meeting yesterday, we got a meeting Monday, like, we're in touch pretty regularly, so we can run that up the flagpole.
Right.
Yeah,
Would National Grid be able to put in 3 or 4 sequence on a street so people could see it?
oh, like a demonstration.
Yeah, it might be better to see it before you sign off on all that. I think the concept's good, but you don't wanna find out there's some unknown
You
downside.
know, what we're surrounded by every other town around.
Right, you could drive to any community that we abut, and you could look at LED
But I
streetlights.
can't, cause the light's too dark in this town, I can't make it out.
Yeah.
One thing you may have scratched your head about, you know, this correspondence on the GIS. Part of my kind of interest in how this could be rolled out. I do think, you know, sending a note to people who abut streetlights, it's just a great opportunity for public engagement. You know, if we do go forward with this, just send a nice note, just say, oh, you live near a streetlight, what do you think? Is the brightness good? Are there glare issues? Cause if we're gonna go forward at some point and have all the lights swapped out, it seems like that'd be a great time to rectify any issues that we wouldn't have any way of knowing about unless we asked. I mentioned to Chip the other day, like, for all I know, there's a resident on, you know, whatever street that sent a letter to the town 10 years ago saying, oh, this glare is in my bedroom every night and it's driving me nuts, and no one ever did anything. And our current staff would not know that because it's in some basement file. And so I thought that would be a nice process thing. And so that was where the GIS came in, because, and we're always looking to improve our GIS and get more data and more layers. And so that seems to be low hanging fruit, to just get a GIS layer that would allow us to run on a butter list, like a snap, and do like just a nice little, you know, how do you like your lighting? Yeah, open-ended question, and give people a fixed time to respond, 30 days, something. And then just kind of take that into account if there are qualitative issues on number of lights or brightness or glare issues. I think I mentioned to Chip, maybe I mentioned to Rick as well. The only correspondence I can remember getting in the 7 years I've been here. I do remember getting one letter. From a resident, I think it was down in Whetstone that, they felt that the street lighting was inadequate, they wanted more lighting. Up in Maine, I dealt with this and we had a policy on it and it was all very clear and we had a process and it worked well and we added streetlights when we followed the process. It basically had a lot to do with public safety. Here, we didn't have a process, but I basically followed that. I said to I honestly don't remember if it was Chief Dwyer or Chief Duran, it was a while ago, but it just kind of petered out. But that resident's probably still out there thinking like, geez, I'd love more. So I feel like I I think it's a great initiative, fully support it. But that's a way to do it that I think would make it even better. Is to also like directly engage people. And that way also when the lights are swapped out, you don't have people being like, what the heck? No one's told us.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would need to be a big lift to do that, to send a little note and
That's sort of why I think doing a series of 3, like on pick a street. People can look at it, so they know it's coming, you can tell everybody,
yeah.
I don't know, does National Grid do that or entertain us?
I was telling Rick recently, out in our parking lot, we have some LED streetlights in the parking lot, so we actually have something. It's not the same fixture, but we have LED lights in the parking lot, they're 2 different colors.
They're actually right out here.
Again, people will be surprised if you do it, so I just keep thinking if you. Put in 3, tell everybody go look at them, this is coming. If you have feedback, let us know before we go home.
Whatever it's worth, there's I believe that's a 3,000 K lamp there, that's a 4,000 K, and that's a 4,000
You're
K.
just making this up.
No.
I can see that what's going yellow.
This is for real, and they're right out here.
Actually, gotta go look.
Is it raining out?
Oh, jeez.
No, it's not.
I thought I heard
It's a clear sky.
Yeah, we're having issues with the HVAC,
Yeah,
that's
it's chilly.
yeah,
Yeah, I was wondering what's
it's
going on.
miserable. It's been like
But the light, so
so
that,
muggy in the
I think
office.
it's
It's
4,000
front.
K there, and this light, we have to move, see.
Yeah,
everybody-
I did a call.
everyone's discussing that.
Not now, but upstairs been getting so hot
As
that
what we're
they
talking
have
about,
all lights, like 50 stations on the last.
It's good, man, why?
Sometimes it comes on. Thank you.
I would say it's.
Russ is going,
Ross is leaving, he quit.
Me too, I'm one of them.
All right, so what's the next step here?
I mean, I'd love to get the GIS data layer,
Okay.
which I think is, like I said, it's low hanging fruit. We have all the lat launch data. So MVPC could recreate it with no problem, but I would much rather just get the data layer, the definitive data layer from National Grid rather than creating our own.
And so you reached out to do that.
I sent an email to Joe just on Friday. I mean, I haven't heard back yet, but he's pretty good. I'm sure he'll get back to me and I can always follow up, but yeah, I'm assuming they have a shape file they could just send to us. We could integrate it into our system. And then, yeah, I think, maybe we just set up a conversation. I mean, I'd say, nothing, it's like week 2 or 3, because we got a pretty full plate fiscal year end, but when the time is right. It seems like it's kind of like we give them the green light and I think we would want to do some process and outreach, but I think it seems like a high return, activity.
Obtaining the data layer doesn't impact what we think and want to decide. We can sit there and say, go ahead with this.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's just a matter of if I don't know, once National Grid's kind of given the green light, like. I mean, I was telling Wendy earlier, sometimes you ask Brian to do something or you ask Butch to do something and it's done before you even like put the phone down. They go so quickly. And so, it's just, we want to make sure that if our intent is to have some kind of process and comment period before the work is actually done, that we're in sync with National Grid before we give them the green light. But I found
I think.
Joe's been really good to work with over the years. I think
Yeah.
we got a good.
Yeah, I think what you suggested, which is getting the data layer loaded, sending out notification to residents. For comment if they feel they need to.
Yeah.
And that makes sense, and then, hopefully final decision after that.
Yeah.
And one thing I've dealt with in zoning for commercial areas is house side shields where, on one side of the light, there's just like and mitigates glare issues, and like I said a minute ago, like there could be some resident out there who's been have to wait for years by glare, and we wouldn't know if we don't ask, so.
Yeah.
These pictures, part of the design.
Yeah, the
is that
dark
they
sky, it's all
direct
down or facing,
Right,
right,
right.
yeah,
By being, sort of by dint of being a dark sky design,
yeah,
they, they don't illuminate to the sky.
yeah,
They,
yeah.
they minimize sign and upward illumination. So I think, one thing that wasn't mentioned, and this is just like the. Not a reason to make a decision, but there's, was it like $6,500 incentive, was it 6,500?
Yeah.
There's an incentive. When we do it, that's sort of the bonus for doing it, if we do go ahead,
Is there a time limit on like an opt-in date?
that's a good question.
We heard, at the conference we attended recently, they said the LED lighting incentives are being phased out by the end.
That was for lighting conversion.
Okay,
Yeah, well, it was, I don't think that was relevant to this program, and I'm not saying that there isn't. I have no idea what the time frame, but that was specific relevant.
I think that would be helpful to know, because it sounds like otherwise we wanna wait till we do the public outreach and then.
Yeah,
Then vote on
Yeah.
it, so, but if there's a time constraint, we should know that.
yeah. But it is only $6,500, so.
Yeah.
So it's probably better to get everything right.
Yeah.
Um,
All right, I'm good.
Okay, this process as they've outlined it is just so much better than I think the other one of purchasing the light. I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
This is a much more like, I think it's great.
yeah,
I got a follow-up message from them a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
They're still interested.
They call us an absolute impairment, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
great.
Correspondence from town council on the form of petition.
See you later.
Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Oh, great. How did it go with the bandstand?
I had to fight Brian for his microphone. No, that's okay, but I walked up to him and I said, Brian, I gotta steal your mic, I gotta upstage you and steal your microphone, he's like, no. You'll be happy. I think he was good for that.
Did he like the plaque?
Yeah, I think he did.
Was he surprised?
Yes, he was.
Good.
Yeah, it was, classic, no, you can't, what's going on?
Turns into a fist fight.
Yeah.
I was able to stay away from that.
All right, thanks for doing that.
All right, anything on this petition form? Any
Looks
questions?
good to me. I will note, we've talked about this a little bit over the years. One thing I wrestle with, this seemed like a very non-sensitive town council opinion, so I felt comfortable putting it into a public session packet. But, one thing, Ross, we've talked about over the years is the board is entitled to legal counsel, just like any party, and that legal counsel is exempt from disclosure, it's attorney-client privilege. So if an opinion is provided, and Mike McCarron, I would really emphasize that, it's the board is the client for town council. And so if a legal opinion is provided, it's the board's privilege, and the board should really waive that privilege or release that document. We exercise some discretion. I mean, something like this seems like a very, there didn't seem to be a downside, and one of the residents is kind of pressing us for what are the next steps, so I kind of wanted to get this out there. But I do think that's something for like the future of just what's the method. We get a lot of town council opinions, and over the years, there have been lots and lots of town council opinions, and I sometimes haven't been clear on like, what we've been conservative about it. We don't release something until the board's released it. Occasionally, we'll make a judgment call on something like this, but I think it would be helpful to get that pinned down at some point. As to what's a public document and what's a attorney-client privilege. This one seems fairly straightforward.
We've been talking about other potential, we've had people in the past who want to sue the town. And it gets done in executive session and we pay a lot of legal bills and then things go away, nobody hears about it as taxpayers. So it might be, we've got one person who keeps threatening to sue us right now. If that happens, I want it to be in open public session, nothing to hide. So I think the voters, taxpayers, the residents should see a little more when their money's getting wasted. We'll know the discussion, right?
All right, in terms of this petition, so what's the next step? You just.
So I send the neighbors, I mean, I think that it would be a nice thing to do a little letter, mail it. I mean, I can email it to the, or just email it, but just like. Make sure they understand the expectations and the date the board had talked about at the October 1st, I believe was the date.
Yeah.
To seek to have the petition returned. To inform your decision about next winter's snow this operation, so there you go, just a letter.
Okay,
You doing that letter, Angus, or?
I'm adding it to my list,
Okay.
so, yeah.
all right, the next item is review of the select board town manager goal setting. So let's just set a date. I don't know how you feel about this, Chris, but what about the Friday night before? Are you gonna be like packing late? I mean, Friday night is just as bad as Saturday morning, is it not, or? In terms of impacting your weekend,
It'll still run it, but we can do it.
are you gonna be packing probably, right?
It's okay, we're tired.
Well, I don't know, I guess, what do you think about that?
It's actually would be favorable to me
Then a Saturday.
rather than a Saturday.
Yeah, Ross, are you good with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
Yeah.
So what time on Friday works for everybody?
Earlier the better for me.
Earlier the better,
Like 5? Does that work for you, Ross?
earlier the better, I mean, I don't know.
Four. Anybody two, anybody new?
That's where I'm going, yeah. You know, we have the dispatch mediation on the calendar that day for, you're talking the 27th?
Yeah,
Yeah, for 10:30 to, I have it in for 3 hours, 10:30 to 1:30, who knows, but yeah, I'd say 3 or later, 4 or 5, any of those work for me.
What's your work schedule, Ross?
Whatever it is, you guys feel like it's fine with me. I can do 3 or 4, whatever one.
It'd have to be at for 4 for me. but-
Yeah, 4 is fine.
4 o'clock.
4 will be great, and I appreciate the flexibility, it's just, you know, we don't wanna. Like send something out the day before, like we wanna make sure there's lead time, and Ross had asked for the, spreadsheet, and Wendy had actually asked me for it a week and a half ago, and I'm retooling it to take out the. Completed and to take out, or not take out so they're not visible, but just to clearly segregate the completed items, the required items. So it's actually a much shorter list, it's still probably 50 items. But of those things that we're not already engaged in, that are more like the decision points, is the board gonna want to take on this new issue or not? So it's taking time to. Repackage that, but I think it'll be worth it. I think it's gonna make it easier for you guys to do what you're gonna need to do is rather than having it kind of cluttered up with some things that. We're already doing, and some of these things were at the 5-yard line, like they might be done by the end of June, but they're still on the list because they're not technically
I
done.
just disregarded those when I did my list.
But you've been at this for a couple of years, so you have the context to do that, whereas some of them. You know, you, like Sawmill Brook, great example, that's now off the list as of like this week, so. So I'm retooling it, that's why I was gonna just kind of send it over.
All right, any correspondence? No? Items for next meeting agenda, anything on anybody's mind that we should have?
I would like to see this magical handbook that was referenced earlier.
Yeah, I'll send that around, yeah. Yeah, and what I can do, I'll send it.
For the agendas, what do we do with it then at that point? Is it
Yeah.
still valid? What is?
Well, so Rebecca's been working on it, some of the references to open meeting law and things that were dated and stale in the 2001. I believe she's updated, I haven't looked at her working draft, it is on a shared server, I don't know, Max, if you've been involved in that conversation.
I know of it, I know about it.
Okay, but what I can do is send the 2001 and then send a working draft. And, cause I haven't looked at it, so I don't know if we're within 3 or 4 hours of completion or 15 or 20 hours of staff time to complete it. But I can send it around.
If this handbook was approved, I don't know what the status of it, just curious to.
I think it'd be nice, I mean, I remember when I found it, And I didn't find it my first month, I found it like my first year, and I'm like, I brought it to McCarran, I'm like, Mike, this is great. And he's like, oh yeah, I mean, it was from 2001, and he's like, oh yeah, I remember seeing
Well, if
it.
the gentleman here is correct and there's a policy in there on how to establish a committee, that would be relevant.
Yeah, yeah,
I think it's
yeah, I think it's a worthwhile thing to have. Yeah. So yeah, I'll send around it unchanged as well as the working draft.
Okay,
Rebecca's out tomorrow, so I'll send the latter Monday, but I'll send the existing one tomorrow.
all right, I'm gonna move to go into executive session under MGL chapter 30A, section 21A3.
And we're coming
We'll return just for the purpose of adjourning.
second.
All in favor?
While
Read aye.
Capital by.
All right.
I wasn't too sure about that, were you?
All righty.